OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right, bang on 7:30 this Wednesday morning, I want to say. It's hump day. We have, as ever, Eoin Sheahan is with us until 10 o'clock this morning. Eoin, how are you?
Good morning, Ger.
Also with us this morning, Nathan Murphy. Nathan, how are you?
Morning, everybody.
What's rare is wonderful, Nathan. Although you're here most weeks.
But it's not that rare, Ger. I'm probably here more than you at this stage.
Hey, that's just because I had COVID, man. That's just because I had COVID. How are you getting on?
Well, good to see you both back in the...
You've managed to avoid it somehow.
So far. It's inevitable, though, isn't it, really?
When you wrap yourself up in a bubble and don't experience any life, at least...
Well, there is part of that. You look back at Christmas and go, I didn't get COVID, but I also did absolutely nothing of note or that left any memory.
Oh, yeah. You're going to come
life.
on here and tell us about how shit your Christmas was with me and Eoin, who were like basically in prison for a week.
I had a great Christmas, Ger. You were the only one who had a crap Christmas, to be honest.
Well, I was going to say, I think by all accounts, Eoin had a great Christmas, or week before Christmas.
Well,
that's probably the issue, was it?
Christmas.
That was the issue, yeah.
We thought that they were going to take him out and scientifically investigate how he had managed to avoid it. Because he literally did absolutely everything you could do to get it.
Yeah,
I'm surprised you didn't do one of those TikTok videos that almost everybody of your age and generation did over Christmas, which was they showed the video of their antigen test going, I don't know how this happened, and then the flashback to them in the nightclub 48 hours earlier with 500 people.
And the rest.
Yeah, I did think there was like a good kind of level of advertising going on for people who did have positive tests over the Christmas. So, just too humble for that, Nathan.
Well, speaking of positive COVID tests over the Christmas, Novak Djokovic obviously did test positive, we think. The QR code of his positive test was actually giving a negative thing for a while when it was posted, but then they fixed that. It eventually turned positive. It was like a slow release positive QR code, a bit like Oxy. And in the meantime, overnight he has issued a statement which kind of fesses up to a lot of the stuff that he's been accused of by people, particularly is it Ben Rothenberger, the reporter on Twitter, who had done an analysis of the Instagram and Twitter feed of Novak Djokovic since he had apparently tested positive with that QR code, which I repeat was giving a negative result. And Djokovic is like, oh yeah, about all that stuff. Well, let me just talk you through exactly what happened. Nothing really to see here. I mean, I did incorrectly fill out my forms, but it wasn't me who filled them out. It was the people who fill out my forms on my behalf. And my agent is very sorry about that. He has apologised for lying on a document, incorrectly ticking the box. He just ticked the wrong box. That was all. Just ticked the wrong box about my... He didn't know I'd been in Spain in the 14 days before I travelled to... He just was unaware of my movements. Or was it just a tick in the wrong box? That bit's not quite cleared up, but I think we have some of the screen grabs. Do we have some of the screen grabs of the Instagram? No, we don't have some of the screen grabs of the Instagram. Okay. And I actually... My Instagram is now going to my stories as opposed to actually to the Djokovic thing. You got it?
So yeah, we go through some of the statements.
Yeah.
Here we go. So Novak Djokovic obviously posted a statement. What are we talking here? 5 hours ago at this point, so 2:30 in the morning, our time. I want to address the continuing misinformation about my activities in attendance at events in December in the lead up to my positive PCR COVID test result. I do think that's like a bit of a statement of intent straight away in the first paragraph of the statement. The misinformation, like why did the misinformation exist? Was it because there was a vacuum of information created by you and perhaps you let that sit there, or was there actually some misinformation that was peddled?
Or is the misinformation actually not misinformation but factually correct, that you were doing all this stuff when you were supposed to be isolating? Which it turns out, his statement actually is like this kind of gotcha, I'm an innocent man moment, but it's like, yeah, I am totally guilty. I was wandering around. Having done a PCR test, I still wandered around. I was asymptomatic.
Yeah.
How was I supposed to know?
So he goes through the timeline of events. So he says, I attended a basketball game in Belgrade on 14th of December, after which it was reported that a number of people tested positive for COVID-19. So the basketball game in Belgrade is... This is the pesky event that gave Novak Djokovic COVID allegedly. Despite having no COVID symptoms, he took a rapid antigen test on the 16th of December, so that's 2 days later, which was negative. And out of an abundance of caution, I think that's a very interesting phrase, also took an official and approved PCR test on that same day. So, utilising this abundance of caution, he says he was asymptomatic. He felt good. He had not received notification of a positive PCR test until after that event. And the next day, on 18th of December, remember, still using an abundance of caution, I was at my tennis centre in Belgrade to fulfil a long-standing commitment for a L'Equipe interview and photo shoot. I cancelled all other events except for the L'Equipe interview. I felt obliged to go ahead and conduct a L'Equipe interview as I didn't want to let the journalists down. L'Equipe clearly have Novak Djokovic nudes. I mean, he cancelled everything else, but L'Equipe, I mean, he's got some sort of love for
the body issue. I don't think he'd care about that. Can I just? There was the bit where the whole world, as far as I know, if you're in the scenario where you've gone for a PCR test, what do you do before you get your results? What's the rule? If you go for a PCR test, what are you supposed to do?
You isolate, Ger.
What are you supposed to do, Nathan?
You isolate, Ger.
Because you might be positive. Because you don't know you're not positive because you got a PCR test. That's as far as I'm aware. Now maybe you've all been getting PCR tests and wandering around smearing your love juice all over everybody. But anytime we've had to go and wait for PCR tests, remember there was a waiting time of like a week to get your results at the early stages. Things have improved. It's now about 48 hours in most cases. Some people, like, I know you got one back in the same day, Nathan. You're obviously very lucky. Southside Dublin, obviously, better resource than maybe it's good. Maybe it's just a good Mayo connections. Like a little secret green and red thing
Straight
you
to
stick
the top
on
of the queue.
But he didn't. He was like, I got a PCR test, going to wander around and meet the kids. That's when that photograph was taken of him with the kids. So he's not denying he was doing all these things that he's been accused of doing. He's like, yeah, I did all those things. But like, I was asymptomatic, so screw you.
Like, I mean...
Not vaccinated, asymptomatic, happy to go and shake the hands of the kids. So look, he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
And also the Serbian National Postal Service, let's not forget.
When did that happen? He doesn't mention that in the statement.
That was the 16th of December.
Okay. So
That was the...
He's an innocent man when it comes to the post.
Yeah.
Licking the stamps was okay because he was at that stage not shedding.
Like I should say in his statement, like he says that he wore a mask except for when the photograph was being taken in this L'Equipe interview. While I went home after the interview to isolate for the required period, on reflection, this was an error of judgment, and I accept that I should have rescheduled this commitment. So, in fairness to Novak, he says it's an error of judgment.
On the issue of my travel declaration, this was submitted by my support team on my behalf, as I told immigration officials on my arrival, and my agent sincerely apologises for the administrative mistake in ticking the incorrect box about my previous travel before coming to Australia. It's an easy mistake. Have you been in any other countries? No, don't think so. You weren't in Spain. You didn't put anything up on Instagram about training in Spain, did you? Oh, bollocks. Shit. We got caught.
Yeah, the old Instagram has killed him. I guess it just underlines that Djokovic can't be trusted with any of this. That if he is willing to go out and about while both positive and while waiting a PCR test, while unvaccinated,
he doesn't
really
care.
give a damn?
No, he does not care. He does not care. We're living in challenging times, in a global pandemic, and sometimes these mistakes can occur. This was written by the ad copy people for like a major utilities company in the Midwest of America. In these challenging times, human error can occur. We're very sorry for charging you $6 million for your gas last night. Today, my team has provided additional information to the Australian government to clarify this matter. So I'm talking to the government. I'm smoothing it over with them because I'm Billy Big Balls and I'm fixing it. He's not going to make any further comment. And then Australian tennis fans, the best fans in the world.
Yeah, like it's got
star wipe, and we're done.
You'll see about that on Monday.
I think that went pretty well, don't you?
Like it's kind of to a point. We'll see what the immigration department in Australia do at this point, because like there is still one more twist in this tail potentially.
I've been sarcastic.
Sorry. I mean, I'm kind of like just bring this on a little bit, like to see what they do, because this now means that there is kind of like a ball in the Australian court a little bit here. So say, like, I mean, he's going to be in the country, he plays next week. Like, there is still a huge amount of very straightforward questions, I would have thought, that could be asked of Novak Djokovic. Like, is he going to go into his post-match interview room and say no comment to all of these on Monday? When's he due to play? Whatever his first match is. Like, or is he going to continue to do what his brother did the other day and just shut down the press conference at each point that these questions are now brought up? Because like, if you look at what the Der Spiegel story is still maintaining, it's about the dates of these positive tests and the timestamp in these positive tests, and they've got the IT research group Zurforschung working on this with Der Spiegel and said that there is a chance that the positive test is way earlier than what he suggests. Or, sorry, the negative test is way earlier than what he suggests. So returning a negative result was essentially what's allowed him to free up and move around. Whereas there's an allegation out there that actually this is from way before he tested positive for COVID.
Right, and when did he test positive for COVID, and did he actually test positive for COVID? All these are like things that we just need to get answers to. And because he has now admitted that he falsified his travel documents, Australia are within their rights to say, you falsified your travel documents, you've admitted that in public, it's on your own Instagram account, I'm sorry, therefore, as a result of that, you're banned. And you might be banned for 3 years. Like, that's the hardcore Australia, incredibly right-wing immigration policy that, like, the whole thing is a complete mess, Nathan.
Well, clearly, and Australia haven't covered themselves in glory in allowing it to blow up in the way that it has. Like, Novak Djokovic is not going to repent in any way. Like Caitlin Thompson said it last week, he lives in this echo chamber, and he maybe lives in one of the biggest echo chambers in the world, considering he has his internal team who will back him no matter what. But also he has the entire country of Serbia who've got his back and feel that he has done no wrong and that the world is out to get him. So I can't imagine any scenario where in any of those press conferences where Novak Djokovic puts his hand up and says, you know what, I made a few mistakes here. Maybe I need to rethink.
He didn't make the mistake.
Maybe I need to educate myself again around vaccinations, around COVID.
That ain't happening.
I think he's coming out of this completely emboldened, thinking, you know what, I've had COVID again, my immune system kicked in, I was just fine. And I'm here in Australia. I'm here to play tennis. I'm going to become the most successful tennis player of all time at the end of these 2 weeks. And the rest of you suckers are getting it all wrong. Why are you all sitting there in your masks?
I wonder, is there going to be, as Logan Roy put it, a blood sacrifice at some point over the next few days? Is Novak Djokovic's agent going to suddenly be available for other work? I mean, is the only way to double down on this?
I don't think so. I don't think you can hang your unless it's like a temporary suspension and then he's back doing his work for him in 6 months, because like when you're in the inner sanctum of an organisation like that, you know a lot of stuff. Like if the agent was to become disenfranchised somehow, and who knows what would happen. We're in the realms of intense speculation there, but maybe there'll be a blood sacrifice. I can't see it. They seem like a pretty tight-knit bunch. They seem like they all believe the same stuff.
I'm fascinated to see what the reaction inside the stadium is going to be next Monday, Tuesday, when he goes and he plays. Maybe a huge amount of the Serbian population over there go and buy tickets. Maybe
fist fights in the crowd
to how he's been treated. And listen, I think you're right. It's shone a light once again on Australia's immigration policy and the fact that he goes into that hotel and there's other people in there who've been there for 9 years, and they're brought to that hotel from one of the many islands that Australia detained people for undercover and under the cover of darkness for years upon years. But the reports we heard out of Australia last week were actually that there was full support for keeping Djokovic out because of the sacrifices the Australian people feel they made. And you could be right. There could well be fistfights in the crowd next week.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that the Instagram statement is idiotic in that he's admitting to falsifying documents which no country will let you in on. After you've confessed to like, we've done that, I would be, because if you did that in America, when you got to America, you've had your border patrol issues in America in the past, haven't you?
No, I've just been extremely nervous.
Did they not like detain you for about 7 hours and we nearly missed a flight one time?
That was one of our colleagues.
Oh, okay. Was that JP?
Yeah, it was JP. Yeah.
JP. Okay. They were like he like wilted under the pressure. Yes, I am going to do a bit of work. I'm sorry. Like what?
I really hope the US Embassy isn't watching this morning.
It's all right.
Don't reveal his surname. It could be any JP.
It could be. Well, he's jumping ship.
It's the day of JP Gilroy.
We're screwing the Ray Foley show's
overboard.
next American adventure. Anyway, let's not clip that bit. Like, if this was America and you got your documents wrong, you would need to be like, it would be 6 months of your lawyer writing to them and saying, we're really sorry, it was an accident. And they would be like, still, yeah, okay, you're on probation or you're out for a couple of years. There's no like, grand, we understand. Because the documents aren't that difficult, right? And it's, again, you're kind of supposed to fill in your own immigration documents. That's the other thing that in all this. So I don't know. I don't think he's going to get to play now because of the statement this morning. I think that's like a last desperate attempt to win some political favour by explaining And the old adage, if you're explaining, you're losing, has never been more true in this case, I think so. But I'd love to see it. I mean, I agree with you. I'd love to see it.
I think we could kind of all do at this point. I think we're all sort of invested in the drama of it. That it's kind of like let's keep this thing going. Obviously, what we saw the other day is it kind of spilling over into bit of violence on the streets, and you're like, God, is that actually what we're all invested in this for? And we're going to feel guilty about feeling excited about this drama in a week's time because, as you say, there might actually be fighting in the stadium.
Yeah. It'll be, the security guards will look after that.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. It's 7:45 this morning here on OTB AM. If you've just joined us, you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream. You can tweet us at Off the Ball AM, or of course you can always WhatsApp the show. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. And this is OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. The other major sporting controversy, global sports washing story at the moment, apart from Newcastle and the transfer merry-go-round, which we'll get to a little bit later on in the show, is a press conference that has been given by the golfers who are heading to Saudi Arabia. And this is on the back of the Star this morning. Shane Lowry, I'm a golfer, not a politician. So it's the world's third biggest men's tour. What's this? The DP? This
is the Asian tour. So
right.
What Shane Lowry is among many, if not most, of the world's top golfers who's going to be playing in Saudi Arabia at the Saudi Arabia Invitational at the beginning of next month. The attitude towards Saudi Arabia has changed somewhat over the last couple of years in golf because Saudi Arabia is trying to go it alone. So we've heard about the Premier Golf League, which at one stage Saudi Arabia was preparing to back for hundreds of millions of pounds. That doesn't seem to be the case. What they are doing now is going in with the Asian Tour. Greg Norman is heading it up, and they are going to run several huge money events on the Asian Tour to go up against the PGA Tour and the European Tour, and to draw the best players in the world away from those tours and bring them to Saudi Arabia. And ultimately what they want is a breakaway tour. But this tournament has been going for the last couple of years. Shane Lowry is probably a little bit surprised at the reaction this year because Shane Lowry signed a 3-year deal with the Saudi Invitational after he won the Open Championship and has played there for the last 2 years. Graham McDowell won this event a couple of years back. So this year, because I think of what's going on with Newcastle and maybe more of a focus on Saudi Arabia and sports washing, and also particularly within golf, what Saudi Arabia is bringing to the table and the rivalry with the PGA Tour. There's obviously a lot of interest in who's going and who's not going.
So it says the event is 4.4 million euros, right? That's what it says in the paper here, but that's not the reality. That's the prize money. But actually, if you show up, you get a lot of cash. Is that what happens?
Basically. So what goes against any reasoning, golfing, sporting reason for going to Saudi Arabia doesn't stack up in any way, because on the same week, the PGA Tour is at Pebble Beach for the AT&T Pro-Am. Pebble Beach, one of the greatest golf courses, one of the most storied, historic golf courses in the world, with a prize fund that will probably hit 10 million this year. So they're not going there for peanuts. The winner will probably get a couple of $1 million. But very few of the top players in the world are going there. They're all going to Saudi Arabia for what you say is a prize fund of pretty much half that. And the reason they're going is because they're getting enormous appearance fees. And it does seem that these are never made public, and there's always speculation. There was a time where it was seen that Tiger would get 2 or 3 million of an appearance fee for going to the Middle East, whereas other players might get 100 grand or 200 grand. And I know even talking about this in Golf Weekly, there was a sense that those players just below the top tier, and Shane would be somewhere in between, despite being a major champion, that they were getting a couple of 100 grand. It seems from all the reports that are coming out that almost everyone who's going is getting at least £1 million, if not a couple of £1 million, to go and play this. So regardless of where you finish, if you go to Saudi Arabia, you stink the joint out, you shoot 76, you finish last, you're getting a couple of million in appearance money.
So the players
this isn't obviously a new thing. Like appearance money's always been a thing in golf.
Yeah, with the players going, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, and US-based Europeans such as Fleetwood, Tyrrell Hatton, GMAC, and Shane Lowry.
And that's only a small portion of the list. The field for the Saudi Invitational will be several times stronger than the field for what will happen at Pebble Beach. So almost all the players who've been asked to go are going. Rory McIlroy's not going, has made it clear he's made a decision that he doesn't feel it's the right thing for his career right now. Tiger Woods had said previously that he wasn't going. And obviously they would be the two biggest draws still in golf. But McIlroy, maybe we need to praise him more for the decision has decided that right now he's not going to take the Saudi money. He's also the head, as we mentioned before, of the players' union essentially on the PGA Tour, which maybe influences the decision, because the big difference this year for the players is that they had to ask permission to go to the Saudi Invitational. Usually they can go and rock up wherever they want, but now the PGA Tour and the European Tour have made it clear that unless we give you permission to play on the Asian Tour and any of these events that are backed by Saudi money, there could be consequences. But they have rolled over, and because of the funds I think at play, allowed them to play this one event.
You say there that maybe McIlroy deserves a little bit more praise, but I wonder, Nathan, is actually the reason why some golfers have chosen to be a bit cautious about this. Is the reason for that nothing to do with Saudi Arabia's record on human rights, but actually totally to do with golf and the potential new future that Saudi money would bring to golf? Because if you look at what McIlroy said last year, and it was around maybe April, May time, because he's talking about the Super League. He says if you look at what happened last week in Europe with the European Super League in football, people can see it for what it is, which is a money grab, which is fine if that's what you're playing golf for, is to make as much money as possible. Totally fine. Then go and do that if that's what makes you happy. Is McIlroy actually making a political stance here? It seems that it's more to do with the kind of the traditions of golf and what matters to him as a golf professional as much as anything else.
I think he's making a stand because of his role within the PGA Tour, and he's one of those who leads negotiations on behalf of the players, and the PGA Tour have responded to McIlroy and what the players want. They have upped the prize fund massively. They've implemented this PIP plan where McIlroy is one of those who's basically getting money for nothing at the end of the season, is one of the top 10 players in terms of profile. And I think he probably looked at this and thought, is it worth the hassle? I'm sure he remembers the backlash after he played with Trump back in 2016. He's come out since then saying, I wouldn't do it again. And it might be a time of the season where actually McIlroy doesn't want to play. It may not fit into his schedule and may work out quite nicely that he doesn't have to go. So I don't know if he's making a huge political stance and will never turn up in Saudi Arabia. If this tour kicks off, Paul Casey, when this tournament first happened back in, was it 2019, came out and made a big statement of, I'm not going to Saudi Arabia because of the human rights issues, and then went to play it the year after, just to see it for himself as to what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that you can't have it both ways, right? I love Shane Lowry, one of my favourite sports people ever. Amazing career, but very disappointed that he's going to play in Saudi Arabia. Just really genuinely disappointed that they've decided that all those golfers have decided that nothing that happens outside of my world is important. I live in a bubble. I live in an echo chamber. It's not a million miles away from the similar criticisms that you would have for any of the sports people who are choosing to be selfish rather than part of the rest of the world. It's like, what stories do you decide are important or not important? What's the red line for you when it comes to endorsing a regime or being involved in a country, or are you not a citizen of the world? Or if you are a citizen of the world, then there's a price to pay, and that price is engagement. I think you have to engage with stuff. You can't just put your head down and say, this doesn't matter to me, because what matters? Is it only local politics that matters? Is it not even that? Does nothing matter? And it seems nothing matters at this stage. So for me, that's very disappointing.
Yeah, I think it's disappointing as well. But I'm not in any way surprised, because I think golf is just one massive echo chamber. And where is the red line? So when you talk to any of the golfers about this, the things that come up all the time are the nonsensical growing the game argument, that this is a part of the world where golf could flourish over the coming years, and we want to really help that happen. Checking it out for themselves, that sort of Paul Casey line of I've been over there and it hasn't seemed that bad, and it looks as though they're making progress, and if we can be a part of that progress, well, isn't that a good thing? And also then that red line issue of, well, if you're not going to play in Saudi Arabia, where does that stop? Should you play in China? Should you play in Qatar, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, where the European Tour has been based for decades at this stage, where all their big money tournaments happen, and that is the justification that a lot of the golfers give themselves. Shane Lowry obviously went with the line of, he is a sole trader. It's about making an income for him and his family. This is obviously a very good payday. So do you want to turn that down? And if you turn that down, what else are you going to turn down? Are you not going to go to some of those other countries whose politics you may not agree with? But I think most people feel that there is a red line, and like South Africa is most definitely below that red line. South Africa back in the day was below that red line, and Saudi Arabia right now is. So we don't know. We don't know in 10 years' time.
I think that's a good comparison to draw. So a lot of people had to make the decision about whether or not they were going to play in apartheid South Africa, and they decided not to play there in different sports. And it seems to have been important. Historically, it seems to have been important. Like, we all know sports washing works. It's one of the oldest things that's ever happened in human civilization, is that money put on sports events to keep people happy. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening here. It's not about growing the game. It's about establishing Saudi Arabia as a power broker in the world and using the soft power of sport to do so. We see it with Newcastle. We see it with Qatar, and we see it with Abu Dhabi, and we see it with everybody, right? And we've seen it with America in the past, and we've seen it with Britain in the past, and we've seen it with Russia. So that's not to suggest that those other countries weren't at this as well. It's just that you then are part of that. You're choosing to be part of that for money, and that's a choice you've made, but you can't get away from it. Like, the point you're making, golf is an echo chamber, and all the golfers are doing it, and so therefore that throws a blanket over it. That gives you some cover, and it helps you sleep at night, but like, I don't know. I don't think you can just go ahead and say, "Oh, we're on the same massive jumbo," metaphorically here, that arrives, and we all play our golf, and we come out 4 days later, and everybody counts their money, and it's grand. It doesn't feel grand. It feels a bit. You just feel this isn't right.
No, it doesn't feel right at all. But this is just the start of it. And that may also have been a factor in the decision to go, that it's clear that Saudi Arabian money is going to become a huge factor in golf over the coming years. Now, maybe that could have been nipped in the bud 3-4 years ago, where all the leading golfers in the world said, actually, no, we're not going. And that they saw that golf was not an option for them. But you got to think of the sport that golf is, and particularly where it is in America. Like, you sit down and you watch, PGA Tour golf coverage, and you could have the CEO of Sheahan talking for 10 minutes about how much he loves the environment, because they're the sponsors of the tournament. That there's nothing that golf won't do to take in extra cash. And because of this power grab that's going on with the different tours at the moment, they're going to become even more desperate to get whatever money they can. And I think obviously in Ireland, Shane Lowry playing is going to be a big issue. But, Graham McDowell has gone and played there before. Very few golfers have made any sort of a stand, and I don't agree with it. I think it'd be great if he wasn't to go, and maybe Shane Lowry's looked at it and thought, if I don't go, am I making a stance here? Am I going to have to sit in interviews and explain my political reasons behind this? Maybe he doesn't feel educated enough to sit there and have that sort of conversation. I'm not sure if that'd be the case. I think people would just say, fair play, well done. Or you're playing in Pebble Beach. Again, you have an opportunity to play at one of the great tournaments. It's a pro-am. You could probably bring one of your family with you and go and play with them at Pebble Beach on the PGA Tour, and a link-style course. Go and win that event. But so anything of we go and we play the best courses, we play the best events, like that sort of nonsense is gone when you go to Saudi Arabia the same week as a tournament like that. But these issues are going to crop up again and again and again, and like there is a bit of a war going on in golf with Saudi Arabia trying to bring these players, and I think it's a talking point for Shane Lowry. It's a controversy for Shane Lowry. It's certainly not a controversy for any of the American golfers, as we know.
It's interesting to see what taking a stand would actually look like in the golf world, because I would say you can safely say that Lewis Hamilton took a stand before the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix by saying he wasn't comfortable racing there, by calling out the Saudi Arabian regime. And when we were talking about that on the show, we got a comment in from somebody saying, well, don't race there, don't show up, don't actually race there. And what we were doing, just to finish my point, like what we were actually talking about in the aftermath of that race was, wow, what an incredible race in Jeddah. Lewis Hamilton versus Verstappen, oh my God, they touched a couple of times, that was absolutely insane. And is that not the very point of sports washing? We're actually talking about this incredible thing that happened in this country. Now, personally, I think that I didn't agree with that commenter at the time, and I think that Lewis Hamilton took an amazing stand at that point, and I think he was rightly applauded for that. But I'm sure there are other people out there who think that he should have gone for it.
If you go over there and you host a press conference and you talk about stuff that includes the murder of a journalist, the treatment of women, the treatment of migrants in that country, and you talk about that there, that's taking a stand. If you wear rainbow colours, highlighting issues around LGBT, that's taking a stand.
Yeah, listen, I think so too.
And so it's not beyond the possibility that some of the golfers do that, and that would be amazing, I think.
I think it's highly, highly unlikely.
Oh, there you go. But we should have. My point here is that we should have higher expectations. We're entitled to have higher expectations, aren't we? Instead of just saying,
absolutely.
Because if that's just them, I'm out. I'm out. Like if it's just rich people's chess in a computer game where they're good athletes. Like that's it's very unattractive when you phrase it the way you phrased it. It's like this is just about money for these people. It's just rich people getting richer. They're throwing bundles of cash at each other, and sometimes they'll miss a putt for $500,000. Sometimes they'll make it. It doesn't really matter.
Well, a far more likely comment is, say, what Justin Rose spoke about over the last few weeks when he was talking about going. He said, obviously, Saudi is controversial, but I've been down there and I've enjoyed my time down there. It's actually a fun golf tournament, good golf course. Listen, they're trying to edge towards a more socially acceptable stance in their policies. You got to start somewhere, right?
Do you know what? I don't know.
And that is far more like the comment that you're going to get from the golfers who go down there. The Lewis Hamilton thing is totally different, much like it'd be like talking to Jeff Hendrick about playing for Newcastle when they're owned by Saudi Arabia. It is your job. He has no choice. He has to play for a club. He has signed for that club. He signed a contract. Lewis Hamilton drives for Mercedes. So he could have made that ultimate stance and said, you know what? I'm going to make one. And he may have gone down in the history books when we talk about him in 100 years. He sacrificed his Formula One title not to play in Saudi Arabia. Golfers are sole traders. They make this known all the time. They have choices themselves. It won't impact on anybody else. It won't impact, would people in Mercedes have lost their job if Lewis Hamilton didn't drive that day because of the collapse in revenue? Possibly. Likewise with Newcastle.
Unlikely.
It's still totally different for sure.
What has happened? But who knows? But I think golf is a totally separate thing because the only people benefiting from going are the golfers themselves. And it's not as if there's not another tournament where they could make money.
Yeah.
It's not as if they couldn't go somewhere else and still earn a heck of a lot of money. So they're making that decision.
Yeah. The sport is telling us who it is.
And
we should pay attention. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, look, let's mone on, because yesterday in The Independent, Oisin Mullen was on the back of the paper, a story about him saying that he's still in Ireland and still hasn't gone down to Australia. Do we know anything more about this, Nathan? Because this is like a hinge moment for the season. I think this could it might not have an impact on the power rankings, but it will be close enough to be like they are a top 4 team, definitely. Without him, they're like clinging on to the top 4. Is that fair, Eoin?
I don't know. I think they were a top 4 team comfortably last year without Cillian O'Connor. So you take out Oisin Mullen and you add in Cillian O'Connor, I think they're about the same, if not better.
The news out of Mayo seems to be right now there's no news, or nobody is saying anything, except that Oisin Mullen isn't in Australia, that he is still in Mayo, and if he had signed that contract and he has his jersey number to go to Australia, well, surely he would be gone by now. And obviously there were rumours pretty quickly that there was an issue around the contract. It doesn't seem as though it's an injury issue. It doesn't seem as though, he'd signed a contract, then there was a medical and something cropped up. Obviously he's had a couple of injury problems over the last few years. It does seem that there's been a breakdown potentially around the contract and that he hasn't gone. And clearly he was seen over the last week or so roaming the mean streets of Kilmaine and has been spotted, and everybody's getting very excited about it. James Horan didn't have a huge amount to say. It did seem when he won the Young Player of the Year again and the All-Stars that, why wasn't he asked about it? You would have thought it was a natural thing to ask him about it. So therefore, that would suggest that maybe he had asked not to be asked about it.
Yeah, but that's exactly when you ask.
Give an answer.
That's Gay Byrne's best ever
you're
thing.
You're like the L'Equipe.
Well,
I was going to say, you're like the L'Equipe journalist with Novak Djokovic, aren't you? Who said, well, he asked not to be asked about the vaccination of the Australian Open. So I thought, well, what would be the point in asking him?
Well, Gabo used to go, is there anything you don't want to talk about? And the guest would be like, oh, I really don't want to talk about this. And then the first thing he'd talk about is the thing that he was told not to talk about. Like, that's what you do. Is there anything you don't want to talk about here? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, you're right. It probably would be a complete game changer for Mayo if Oisin Mullen stays and Cillian O'Connor returns.
Oh, you're getting excited already.
Listen. Chasing defeat against Galway in the FBD League, is stopping everyone's cough. Galway are the real force in Connacht, as we know right now.
Galway are frauds. We established that yesterday.
You established that yesterday.
No, Eoin was like, yeah, Galway are fraudulent. Sure, you are correct.
It'd be huge. It'd be like, you can't get away from the fact that 2-time Young Footballer of the Year, entering the peak of his powers, heading off to Australia for God knows how long, would be massively damaging. And while Mayo have found a way of keeping the talent rolling, you can't just lose a player like that and expect to, like, as you say, that can be the difference. Maybe Cillian O'Connor would have been the difference in an All-Ireland final last year. You know, does Cillian O'Connor miss a penalty? I don't think Cillian O'Connor misses a penalty.
Probably not.
So
probably does not miss a penalty.
Well, I might go to cry again.
Okay, sorry about that. Go on quickly.
Well, our mentions have been flooded this morning with Cavan people after last night's win against Tyrone. The first day we bring the power rankings back, they're already in turmoil. They beat Tyrone by 15 points last night at Breffni Park. So apparently they need a good shot up the power rankings as well. So that's a little update on that front. It's already a mess.
Great.
One day in. We're not even 12 or 24 hours into the power rankings.
We'll have to do it next week as well. Mo Salah, he speaks to Marca and he speaks to GQ. He doesn't speak to anybody else, but when he speaks, he tends to say stuff that's relevant and interesting. So he's done an interview in connection with the GQ Sports issue. There's lots of pictures of him in tank tops, and he looks pretty good. He's a handsome man to the peak of his powers, and he wants to get paid properly, Nathan. He's not asking for too much. That was the standout line, was like, I'm not asking for anything, I'm not due. That's it. That's all. Ball's in their court. Pay me.
God, he looks good. The photos are, yes, everything he's wearing, I want to buy then. He is as slick as they come in those. Yeah, as is pointed out in the interview with GQ, he's not asking for anything he's not due, and all that charitable work he does doesn't come cheap, which was sort of the main tenet of the article, which I guess is a reminder of just how big a superstar Mo Salah is in his home country. That he's probably dealing with a pressure that maybe even Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo don't have to deal with, because they've come from historically successful footballing countries where there was a Eusebio and there was a Diego Maradona before them. There was nobody before Mo Salah. And the obsession when he goes back home just seems to be insane, that like he cannot live anything like a normal life. He's not short of confidence. Like, we don't hear a lot from Mo Salah, and there's something even just about the way he looks that there's a humbleness of Mo Salah in the perception of him. But I was even watching an interview he did with, I think it was a Liverpool website, where it was a real fluff piece of answering online questions, but he kept being asked about the best player in the world, and every time it was, well, obviously I'm going to say it's me. Like, obviously I think I'm the best player in the world.
Yeah.
So there's a proper and understandable, I won't say arrogance, because he probably is the best player in the world, but any sense that you would have from the outside of Mo Salah saying, oh, listen, I'm happy just to be in and around those names of Messi and Ronaldo. No. I vote for myself every year, is what he said. That he feels that he is the man, and well, right now he probably is.
I think we should recreate the Mo Salah photo shoot with Nathan, who says he wants to buy all the clothes. I mean, the sweater vest and bucket hat combo, do you think you can do it?
Well, I don't know if anybody wants this. I don't know if anybody wants the sweater vest.
Come on.
It's more,
you did the Paul Mescal thing pretty quickly.
Actually,
we didn't have to twist your arm too much for that.
I did the Paul Mescal thing. I did, but there was a lot of clothes. Paul Mescal at least had quite. My legs are fine. It's other parts that I'm not keen on showing off. I will tell you a story of the night I met my wife, which was at a fancy dress party, and I went as Zoolander when Zoolander was in the mine. So you remember when Zoolander was in the mine? So I didn't so much look like Zoolander. I looked a bit more like Rabsy Nesbitt. So you see Mo Salah in that.
Nathan.
No, it would not be acceptable today. People would mistake that the Zoolander looked for something else.
Well, this was when he was it was basically the miner's hat and a vest.
And a clean face. A clean face, you're telling me you had a clean face. Don't say no to that. You had a clean face.
No, I absolutely had a clean face.
Okay,
yes.
good man.
Yes, I absolutely had a clean face. But Mo Salah's wearing his £630 tank top from Saint Laurent. That's how I imagined I looked that night. But as I look at the photos years later, it was definitely more Rabsy Nesbitt.
And your wife loves you still to this day. It's a remarkable thing.
Somehow, like she saw me at my lowest point.
Very quickly, Irish players who need transfers, all of them essentially in the Premier League at the moment. Well, with the exception of Vandelli does not need a transfer. He just needs to get in the team. But everybody else needs to get out on loan or to get out full stop.
Yeah, there's the stats at the end of the season are going to make for pretty grim reading. Looking at it last night, Seamus Coleman is the only Irish player who's playing on a regular basis. Shane Duffy obviously started the season very well, but he's in and out of the Brighton side now. we're fortunate we have a lot of players playing in the championship. We probably don't spend enough time talking about those players or, looking at the level that they're playing at, the success they're having. Most of them are playing all the time. The two that there's a real onus on are Matt Doherty and Jeff Hendrick, both of whom Stephen Kenny wants to be real key players and who I think have shown actually in Ireland's renaissance over the last few months that when they play well, Ireland play well. Yeah. But neither of them are playing any football. Doherty, it looks as though, is going to go back to Wolves. Hendrick probably is a big decision because I'm sure he's on a good contract at Newcastle. Maybe they're going to go and do things and you want to hang around and there'll be a change of manager every year and one of them might eventually like you and give you a game. But right now he's not playing any football. He's 29. He's going to be 30 in the next few weeks. You got to get out. And maybe there's some of those younger players like Adam Ida is the one. I was just looking, it's 2 years pretty much to the day since Adam Ida played against Manchester United in the Premier League. That's a week after he scored a hat-trick for Norwich in the FA Cup. We were looking at him at that stage at 18 and thinking this guy's our centre forward for the next decade. Adam Ida in the 2 years since has started 4 games for Norwich in all competitions. 4 games. And he's had a couple of injury problems along the way. But from the excitement levels we had, it hasn't happened. And I think it's, it has found its way into his form with the Ireland team where he's had any amount of chances. He's played far more games for Ireland than he has for Norwich from the start and hasn't really had anything. So I think Ida more than Oma Amadele of the two at Norwich needs to get out and maybe get a championship club and score a few goals and play a bit of football. We'll
come back to that because there's obviously a full month for us to talk about that. Nathan, good stuff this morning. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
11 minutes past 8, OTB AM, brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We have Keith Wood standing by. We're going to talk to him about the front row depth chart and also about the Eoin van Graan situation next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Newspapers have called it the greatest club game ever.
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
The strength of Munster rugby has always been the big boys up front.
There's a lot of pressure on these guys continuously.
I'm actually really, really excited for it.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Keith Wood, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning. I'm slightly confused that in the previous conversation there was Eusebio and Rabsi Nesbitt. I don't think they've ever been juxtaposed beside each other before, but actually I had dinner with Eusebio about 30 years ago.
Wow.
Which was about as big a claim to fame as I have. One of the 4 autographs I ever got in my life. There was it would have been Aircom back in the day, an Aircom sports dinner, and I happened to be sitting beside him. He was brought over to it, and he was as cool as cool. So,
who were the other autographs? Because I know you're not a man to be starstruck, but I think Eusebio's fair enough. Who else?
You'll laugh. There's a kind of alternative group. Jack Nicklaus,
right?
Seve Ballesteros, and Michal O'Mara-Hurtig.
Right.
The 4th.
Wow.
There we go. That's my most random grouping, I suppose, of all time. And I remember asking Michal for it, and he burst out laughing. Sure, he of course is the biggest gent of them all, you know.
Oh yeah, wow, that is a good group. We will genuinely get into that some other time because I do want to talk to you about your appearance on Off the Ball last week, which set the cat amongst the pigeons. What kind of a week have you had? Because I suspect you've been in the papers every day. Everybody's been asking Eoin van Graan about your comments. It's almost like you broke ranks and everybody followed.
Yeah, I don't know that it was a breaking of the ranks. I would have said that for the last, I'd say nearly 12 months at this stage, I have, I found it's just been hard to watch at times. I just don't think the style suits us. That's the question. That was the topic of the question that Joe Malloy had asked me. And I don't think we're big enough, and I think the game has moved, and that was the main crux of what I was trying to get across last week. Was I think we need to have a style that suits the players that we have, and I actually think we win and we get away with a fair amount actually. But it's hard to watch, and I think it's difficult for a whole variety of different reasons if the game is built around a South African style with a huge amount of South African players. So is that going to be the case going forward? Like that comes down to be the issue. So, and the reason, I don't know that I broke ranks, but the reason I said it last week was like, Van Graan is going. That is the truth. It's not as if I was calling for his head per se. He is already going. Now, I would still expect him to be professional all the way to the end, and he came out and said that yesterday. I don't have any doubt about that whatsoever. But it's whether that is going to be the right thing for Munster going forward, because the style and the manner of the game, when you get excited and are waiting to watch a game and there's so little sport on, and you go and Connacht are at home on a tough, wet, dirty day, and Munster don't particularly play, well, then that's very frustrating. And I think as a fan, or as a whole variety of different elements, I think it's worth asking, is that the style that we want Munster to be playing going forward? And then you look at the other games that are on at the same weekend. Now, they happen to be over in the Premiership, and they're exciting and they're something to watch. But I just thought it was very hard. So I think a lot of people, it broke the seal a little, and a lot of people have wanted to kind of query in relation to it. An awful lot of that has been brought down to being about Van Graan. For me, it's about the style that we're trying to go and play. And I can't say that was last week that I've been saying that. I've been saying that for 12 months.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, because I think that, like, if you zoom out a little bit, like, who's making the decision about who the next coach is?
Well, that's an entirely different question. And look, so I would say that for a long period of time, there has been, if we go back 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I'd said that the IRFU contract, and these are IRFU contracts, they're not provincial contracts. The IRFU contract, giving that 6-month break, for me is not a great place to be. So that's not a great place to start. And consistently, for a variety of reasons, and of course with the terrible passing of Anthony Foley 5 years ago, decisions have had to be made on the fly. But it seems like an awful lot of decisions are being made on the fly. And the idea of there being a level of succession planning doesn't quite exist within the structure. That's an issue, So, having a coach who decides he's signing on for 2 years and then decides he doesn't, you don't think necessarily that you have to do your succession planning immediately. But with that contract, you need to have that plan in place all along. And I just don't think that that's there at the moment. So the coach will be picked, I presume, because it isn't exactly a transparent process, but by Nusafora, by Ian Flanagan, the Munster CEO, with support from the Professional Game Board in Munster. So that is the nature of it. So who's going to be the next coach? I'm very happy to see that they re-signed Graham Rowntree, because by all accounts he is well liked. Well, I like him, but he's well liked within Munster, but it also gives a level of continuity on coaching, which is actually very important. So I don't know. I don't know what the process is, but when you have a guy who signed on for 2 years, you're maybe not looking quite as quickly or as earnestly, and now they have to do it very quickly.
Is the structure wrong as well, where so much is invested in the persona of the individual? Before this, it was Razzie, and before that, it was Anthony Foley, and before that, it was Rob Penny, and before that, or did I get the order wrong? Whatever the order was, there's like a long... Whereas actually, if they had a director of rugby who worked for Munster as opposed to maybe the IRFU, then
the structure is, that's the structure it is in every province, that the top guy in all the different departments is an employee of the IRFU. I mean, it's a convoluted system, to be sure. Rathy is the one that stands out as being different in that group that you mentioned. Rathy was brought in as a director of rugby, and he had the skills and capability to go and do it, and we've seen what he's done in South Africa afterwards, notwithstanding his video during the lines and his reaction during the lines. But he was a director of rugby type, very strategic, very, very capable, very organised for what he wanted. And it was building up a structure that sits in underneath him. And look, I'm in favour of that. I think that is, whether it's a director of rugby or a head of rugby, or there has to be something consistent, and there has to be, and I know there's a reaction different times as to what is the Munster way and all that sort of stuff, but there has to be a Munster way, and there has to be someone who holds the keys to that isn't at the vagaries maybe of disappearing every 2 or 3 years, but there needs to be a level of consistency, but consistent improvement as well. So, I mean, that's what's required. So, yeah, I think the structure needs to be tinkered with, definitely. And I believe that Munster started to do that well with Ian Costello coming in as the head of academy, or the academy director. I don't quite know what his title is, but his job is there to build and upskill all the guys coming out of schools and clubs, and it's to try and enhance that idea of getting as many local players playing as possible from Munster. That takes a period of time, but that's something that is and has been very important for a long time, and I don't know that it's got the due regard, and I think it does now with Ian taking over that role.
Munster Rugby Academy Manager is his title, but yeah, and he might be the right person for that. It was interesting to just Google that there. It was announced on the IRFU website as well, so presumably he's also an IRFU employee. Again, very opaque, very secretive. No one actually knows who works for who and what the point of that is. And look, I don't know why that is, but certainly Irish rugby has cloaked itself in a veil of secrecy, which they think seems to serve them well. I would disagree with that, but if there was somebody who was a director of rugby, if he was to ascend to that role, then he would also have responsibility for the relationship with the clubs and could start to have a much broader sweep, but look after that, while at the same time making sure that the first team squad had enough players to implement the style of play that the head coach, whose job it was to just look after that first team and the academy, like graduates. There's definitely a better structure there than investing everything in the next Messiah who comes along, and as soon as a big check gets waved from the UK or France, disappears.
Well, I do. I think it's sustainable, and I think it would be the more ideal version. I think we have a sort of de facto version of that in Leinster, as an example, partly because I know Leo's only signed on for another year, but Lancaster does an awful lot of the coaching, and Leo seems to manoeuvre all the different elements around on the outside of it, and it seems to be a very, very good partnership that's worked well. So look, it's not to copy any other province, and I have to say I don't know that every province has the exact same either resources or ideology, and I don't know that they need to. There just needs to be a structure that is able to suit them, and for too often there are too many, coaches coming and going, or for whatever reason, and I would say as well at different times you're looking for coaches to help develop the players that are there, and you're looking to try and play a style that suits them or upskill them to a certain way. So I had a huge amount of regard for Pat Lam when he came to Connacht. And I know Connacht is a bit of a special case because you can almost get away with more in Connacht because they've less. And I know that's oxymoronic. But the idea that you can just change the way a team goes to play, this is what you're going to do, these are the skills you have to work on. It won't work straight away, but it will work in time. And you're given time. For Munster, Leinster and Ulster even, there's rarely that amount of time given to be able to help develop something that suits the players that they have at their disposal. So, but I thought Lam did a great job, and I think Friend has done a very good job since, trying to continue that and promote that. So look, I'm as I am and as I have been for a while, I'm a bit frustrated with it. I was delighted when I looked at the game at the weekend. I wasn't delighted by the style of play, but I was delighted by I don't know if you just call it pure dogged determination of the team by the end of the game to eke out the most unlikely of victories. and I thought they played with a little bit of more. I thought they played with more pace. I thought Casey played a lot faster. He looked to pass, and he looked far better. I mean, I say that often. As soon as he slows down, he doesn't look great. The second he speeds it up, he actually looks the thing that was exciting when he came on the scene a couple of years ago. So, but still, having said that, it was a fairly turgid note. I used that word turgid last week, and it keeps kind of coming back. But it was a bleak day. It was lashing with rain, but there wasn't a huge amount of rugby involved in it. So, I don't expect to see Munster change too much, but now they go away for this weekend and hopefully get a big win in France. And if that's possible, we don't know quite how Castres will turn up, because they're one of the consistent underperformers, though at home they do tend to play pretty well. Look, you still want Munster to do well. That's the other element that sits in this. I'm a fan as much as anything else.
From what you're saying this morning, Keith, it does seem that Munster can't just be looking for a head coach at the moment, that they need to be looking for a director of rugby as well.
I think so. I think they're separate. Recruitments, actually. I think and ultimately you need to have very rugby-oriented decisions that don't disappear when a coach disappears. And there also is a bit of a difference between the professional and the amateur game, and I do think that part of that structure makes it awkward within it. And so, look, I've said this often. I think in many respects, we're 25 years or 27 years into a professional game. It was a professional game that was planted on top of an amateur game and an amateur structure. You want both of those to thrive. But I don't know that necessarily the work was done to try and get the best out of them. Now, I think we have done incredibly well in Ireland over the last number of years, and we've succeeded very well. But the game changes and circumstance change in cycles every 5, 6, 7 years. Yeah. And we're at a point again where it's changing. So when it's changing, it's time to kind of
change.
Maybe take some of the emotion out of the question, but you do have to ask the question and say, look, is this fit for purpose? If it isn't, can we have a discussion as to how this can kind of change? How can we move this around a little?
And make the succession plan.
Yeah,
make the succession plan public. Do you have one last one on this, or are we?
Let's move it on.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's do the depth chart, okay? Because we're hopefully 4 weeks out from the start of the Six Nations, and every year we do our depth chart to see what is going to be our starting team. Our front row looks fairly nailed on at this stage, in that we've had a massive leap forward in terms of form and application. Andrew Porter is rounding into a top quality international. The level of experience that he has for his age is huge, but also the power that he has, he's starting to kind of fully realise just his full potential. So at the moment, I guess he's number one on your loosehead chart.
Yeah, I think he's a top international forward. I don't think he's a top international loosehead yet. And that's only because I think he is a very good loosehead. I think he will be the more he plays. And actually, I'm really interested to see how he's going to go in the next year or two, because he could become world class at a loosehead. I mean, it's funny. I was looking at this when we originally had this conversation, and I looked at this depth chart to the one we did 12 months ago, and Porter wasn't at loosehead at that stage. And I remember talking about how much I loved the fact that Tadhg Furlong was their tight head, and that when he had to come off, we'd Andrew Porter to come on. That's such a rare gift to have that strength and depth. So I was a little bit nervous about the changeover that was happening with him. But it's been a revelation, actually, having both of them on the field at once. I think he's definitely the starting loosehead. When I look at the whole depth chart, I don't think there's a huge change over the last 12 months. And I don't think there'll be a huge change over the next 12 months. These are the guys that we're going to be building our house on. The first two sets front row, to be honest.
Our loose heads, we just put it up on screen. Andrew Porter, number 1. Cian Healy's number 2. Dave Kilcoyne is 3. And Ed Byrne is 4 for you. What does Kilcoyne need to do to get ahead of Cian Healy?
He needs to, Dave Kilcoyne is incredibly powerful as a ball carrier, and that is very useful when you have the space in which to do so. I think if we looked at the autumn, and that's the best way for us to view this game or this process here, is to look at what Farrell has looked to change with the Irish team. And what he's looked to do is to have a variety of different playmakers involved, a variety of different lines and pods. There are 2, 3, 4, 5 options for every single pass within it. You need ball handlers, so you don't just need to be Dave Kilcoyne running at huge accelerated pace into contact or into space, doesn't really matter, but he can't do that all the time. So there's a requirement for all the players that are big ball carriers to be able to have that subtlety. And that reason for that is you're an option, but you are not just an option for contact. You're an option to draw defenders if you release the ball back to a 9 or 10. And that's something that Furlong in particular has done incredibly well. So I think that is the progression that Farrell is looking for among his front row in particular. And for that, Kilcoyne needs to be able to mix that part of the game up more.
Okay, one last question about Andrew Porter. There was one narrative about switching from one side to the other. You're going to lose a bit. It's going to take him time to acclimatise to the role. The other way of looking at that, the other perception on that is he's coming from the harder side to scrimmage on, and actually it's going to be hugely beneficial to him having been a tight head. When he goes to loose head, it's almost like I've done all the hard stuff now. I'm out of the treacle that I used to be in, and I can be far more disruptive now.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see whether you'd say Tadhg Furlong is stuck in treacle, but I do take the point. And Porter had been a loose head originally, had moved to tight head. Tight head is notoriously difficult, damaging almost on players. I do think there'd be a liberation for him going across, but also his reaction to going across has been beyond professional. I think he's given the Leinster team and the Irish team a stronger scrum, because Cian Healy the fact that Cian Healy is still playing is pretty amazing, from the injuries that he has had, and the quality of his performances, even in the autumn, were just fantastic. So I think you get an opportunity to get the most that you can possibly get out of Cian Healy because Andrew Porter has moved over there. So I think it's worked out incredibly well. I think it was, I think there was a high level of risk involved in it, but we can't sit here and say that we don't want to see some risk, So I think it's worked really well.
Is there a world in which someone like Andrew Porter actually becomes a hybrid prop if, say, Tadhg Furlong picks up a knock and misses 1 or 2 games at the Six Nations? For example, would he be your first choice tight head and start Cian Healy were Tadhg Furlong to be out for a couple of games in this year's campaign?
Well, it's funny you said that. I've been looking. I never liked the idea that the front row would go off after 55 minutes or 60 minutes. I'm never a fan of that. If you looked at the autumn, the players played longer, and I wonder whether that was part of a design from Farrell to try and say, can we get them on for 70 minutes or do whatever. If that is the case, if players are going to play for longer, I think that then becomes more realistic that you just want to have the best players on the field, however you can manage them on. So yes, I think that's rare that can happen. But even if you've looked at some of the, again, Premiership matches, some of the players, Coles for Leicester has been playing very large amounts of minutes. Marler has been playing 80-minute games nearly entirely because he's able to, and they're able to. And so again, we're going in cycles where everybody was taken off after 55 minutes. That's beginning to change now. So look, I think you want the best players on the field whenever you can. And that's one thing I will say about the autumn internationals as well. Traditionally, there would be chopping and changing of the team, and you'd have a lot of different players. That didn't happen in the front row. Ireland pretty much stuck with the same people to see how they'd get on, how they would go. And I'm not a huge fan of chopping and changing large amounts of players, and you do need core players that should be picked pretty much all the time.
Yeah, one of the reasons I think is because we were seeing Ronan Kelleher arrest the number 2 jersey and take it, and it was like, okay, we're just going to make sure you bet in here and see what that unit is like, and he is your number 1 when it comes to hooker at this stage.
Yeah, Kelleher is my number 1. I have Dan Sheahan in at number 2 and Rob Herring at number 3. That's hard on Rob Herring, and I have to say Herring has reacted to not being picked in the autumn, and he has put in some pretty decent performances since. And the reason I've put them in that number is because that is ultimately the future, but it's the future you kind of need to work on now. And again, we had this discussion before. I think Kelleher is standout. I think Sheahan is behind him, but he doesn't have the experience yet. But I would want him to be trying to gain that experience as much as possible, and that's why I have him in the second slot. And for Rob Herring in particular, you just know you can trust him. But I think there is a much higher ceiling for the 2 guys. They're bigger men, and they're younger, and we've known in times past that when you get to a World Cup, you want a blend of the old and the new. And but if you have guys that are very big and powerful and have enough of rugby under their belt, then you want them at a World Cup. And look, I'm looking forward to that. I think it's exciting. I think they are two players in the one province fighting with each other constantly. They're only going to drive each other one way, you know.
Yeah, and the one caveat would be it's going to be difficult for Sheahan to get a lot of experience between now and the World Cup, assuming Kelleher's fitness. So you'd hope that he gets game time both for Ireland and Leinster. Yeah,
I mean it is difficult, and technical positions are they're difficult. You can train all day long, and you can throw at a point on the wall all day long, and you can hit a scrummaging machine all day long, but it's the matches and the big matches and how different players react against you under pressure and how you're able to react under pressure are the key components for that experience that needs to be built. So look, he needs to be playing. Sheahan needs to play a huge amount. There is a difficulty with that, but it also might mean we could end up with 2 hookers that are fighting for the one position who are almost sharing the load, and we might be able to get the most out of them over a long period of time. That's okay. And also we get injuries.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to accept the fact that it kind of evens out over some level of time.
The tight head position, obviously, Tadhg Furlong, this is not a secret, is top of the depth chart, funnily enough. Genuinely world class, potentially our best player at the moment. The one issue is that behind him, so Finlay Bealham is your number 2, Tom O'Toole is 3, and John Ryan is number 4. Bealham's coming back into a bit of form, and you would just hope that there's some, not pressure on Tadhg Furlong, but that the replacements get to a level where we're like, yeah, that's fine. You're as good at the moment as Sheahan or Cian Healy at the moment, or Kilcoyne even. We just need. I guess I'm saying we need a bit of confidence when Tadhg Furlong goes off that his replacement is going to be up to international quality.
Well, I think to the point earlier on, if you're asking me who is second behind Tadhg Furlong, in truth, I'd say it's Andrew Porter. And that could be part of the change of it. I think Bealham has played pretty well this year. But there's a very large gap between him and Furlong, or him and Porter. And one thing I will say about Furlong is Furlong doesn't need anybody behind him to push him. He's a setter of his own standard, and there's just no issue with him at all. But he becomes incredibly important to keep fit. And we do need to try and upskill the other tight heads, because there is a big gap there now. So So I don't know what Farrell again will think, whether he'll say, well, actually, we can definitely have Bealham or Tom O'Toole on the bench, and we're okay with that. But actually, if it really became a big issue, would it go back to being Porter? And that's the question. I don't know. But for me, actually, the second best tight head is Andrew Porter.
Okay.
But he can't play both sides of the scrum at once.
No. So we're desperately hoping that we never find out what the answer to that question is if an injury happens to Furlong.
Or we desperately hope that we can drive on the guys behind it. And I have to say, for Bealham, Tom O'Toole and John Ryan, the fact of Porter moving across to Loosehead does give a window for more things to happen. You know, it does that they will get a chance, because again, we go back to the dreaded word injury. If the people get injured, you get bumped up the line. So you're going to have to be able to do it. So maybe that just means they'll push on a little bit more.
Keith, great stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Pleasure. Cheers, gents.
It's Keith Wood giving us his front row depth chart, and we'll stick that up on the website for you. You can get it on YouTube as well. The latest episode of the Koi Gig podcast is now live. It features Ireland and Aston Villa star Ruisha Littlejohn. Here's a taste of that conversation.
I'm me. I don't change my personality or who I am, and it sometimes probably goes against me. But I can't change the way I am, and I'm always going to be true to myself. So maybe some coaches don't like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, I did feel a wee bit hard done by Carol. I did. It was sad times. But saying that, obviously, Colin was the coach at the time, and I think he is a very good manager. He's a good coach. He's very detailed in what he does. I would have liked to work with him, but unfortunately, I didn't really get to. But that's football, I guess.
You say there, and like Karen was saying it as well, that you're quite outspoken about things and that you don't mind like having a joke. And I think you could even see that in your career in the terms of like you're one of the players who spoke out about Birmingham, about the facilities when they weren't up to scratch. You've always been you've been open about your relationship with Katie and doing different things, like when they lit up the Aviva. I know you guys did loads of different like media appearances about that, and you always have that sort of thing where you're very willing to say things that maybe other people aren't, which is great from like an outside perspective. But do you feel like sometimes it has hampered you along the way?
Probably, but I'd say it's probably more so my personality. I think some people don't get it at times, but I'm just like, why do we have to be like robots? I still slag like the girls today every time after they post a picture after a match, and it's the whole same post like, oh, game day under the lights. Another great 3 points. On to the next one.
I think I'm actually going to mute the phrase "we move" or "we go again." Like that, and what do they mean? They are so generic. They mean nothing. I hate when people say them. I'm going to get slack now for saying that, but yeah, I get what you mean. Like a lot of footballers, interviews and stuff, they're very generic. Yeah, we learned a lot from this. We'll go again, but it's nice that you can actually criticize yourself in a meaningful way or praise the team in a meaningful way. And I think that that's what we love about your interviews more than anything, and that's why we were so keen to get you on the podcast obviously today.
Yeah, so get more of that good stuff. Some truth bombs there from Ruisha Littlejohn speaking with Karen Duggan and Kathleen McNamee on this week's Koi Gig pod. The full episode including their WSL team of the week and a breakdown of Birmingham's unprecedented win over Arsenal on Sunday. It's their first home win in 805 days. They hadn't won since before the pandemic. That's how long it was since then they beat Arsenal at the weekend. You can get that podcast right now and every Tuesday on the OTB Sports app. You can watch it back on the Off the Ball YouTube channel as well. John Duggan is with us at 8:44 this morning. John, good morning to you. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, lads. And I feel like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day.
Yeah, there you go.
It's remember that song?
I Got You, Babe.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And he's
it's like, what's this? What are you talking about? Who's Bill Murray?
Old man shouts a cloud again. No white chocolate, no fudge. All those phrases in that movie are all in my head. I love that movie. Great movie. Harold Ramis.
Well, Happy New Year to you, John.
Happy New Year, Eoin. uncomfortable silences and tumbleweed.
I was shouting at the radio, listening on Saturday, going, I remember V and
Ironside.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was scary, V. That kind of gave me the creeps.
We were just at the age where it was like you were going to have nightmares watching it.
Well, they took their eyeballs out and put them in the glass case.
Did you watch the remake?
No, was it any good?
Made a remake for our generation. It was not great. No.
What have you seen the trailer for the remake of The Fresh Prince?
There's not, is there?
Oh, it's drama. They've turned it into a drama now. Yeah,
I've completely missed this.
So it's Will Smith production. So
is the guy with the cardigans in it?
Yes. He is like, so it's a proper mansion. Like he is moving from. There's a dispute in a playground. They were playing some b-ball.
Yeah.
Outside of school.
Yeah.
And
the guys are up to no good.
Well, there's a fight, and gun. Your man finds a gun, shoots it in the air, gets arrested, and then gets shipped out to Bel Air, and so meets the family, and that's the trailer.
It sounds like a Boys in the Hood version of this.
That part of it was, and then obviously it flips to being Succession style money.
Yeah.
So
actually. Doesn't sound horrendous. Like, I mean, the concept is wild, but this could be good.
Carlton's a high achiever, like
It kind of passed me by the first time that it was on in the background a lot. I never really got into it.
Oh no! Every Friday it was like Batman the Animated Series, Fresh Prince of Bel Air, Joe Maxey.
I was actually going to say Fridays as well, but obviously I'm not sure what time of day it was on during your time, but I certainly remember like 5 o'clock.
6,
yeah.
6:30.
So that was obviously a thing that it just didn't go away for a long time. The Friday slot was Fresh Prince.
Maybe it was 5, 5:30, 6, 6:30, home and away. Finished at 7 o'clock. It's like, this is
that's still that's still going to this day, right? I mean, like
home and away.
Well, obviously it's like in a different form, but I mean, sorry, the time slot for home and away. I know home and away is still going, but I mean, 6:30 and home and away is like pretty synonymous, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Right.
I can see a Richard Cooper slot out of this.
How dare you, John? I didn't know. That was definitely complete parody. That wasn't based on any bit of
OTB
anything that might be close to the bone or anything.
Brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. What's going on?
Virgil Insante's back.
Woohoo!
More royalties in Jamiroquai this year, folks.
You're feeling it though. You've got you've got your eye in.
My eye's in. Good Leopardstown. And good year last year, 46% profit on the golf tips on Virtual Insanity, and profit at Aintree and Cheltenham as well. So look, we're hoping this year, look folks, obviously don't gamble more than you can afford, and please do responsibly. This is all about more so a challenge. Can you actually find the winners? And the playing God for me is more the excitement and the fun out of this than anything else. So we're going to start this week with Hawaii, where we'd all like to be, with the Sony Open in YLA Country Club. First held in 1965, par 70, tight track. And it starts tomorrow at 5 o'clock Irish time. So we're going to spend €20 of our virtual money. The rationale, the explanations on otbsports.com, but I'll go through the 5 players here right now. Corey Connors, I think I mentioned him before, from Listowel, as Eoin would know, in Ontario, not Twindle Kerry, I don't think. But Corey Connors is the headline tip for €3 each way, 25 to 1. Has played here twice, 12th and 3rd. Last year he top 10s 8 times from 29 starts, played well at the Masters, played well at the also the Open Championship. His only win on the tour came on Bermuda Greens, which he's going to face this week, the Texas Open. So it's not a too dissimilar course to YLA in Hawaii. So Corey Connors, I think, is an excellent ball striker, and I think another win is due. He's the headliner, 25 to 1. The next one, Billy Horschel. I can't believe Billy Horschel is 40 to 1 for 250 each way. Like, this guy won the World Match Play and the BMW Championship, the flagship event on the European Tour last year. He was 7th in this last year, tied for 7th. He tuned up well last week. And generally, players who play last week do well in this, because of the 23 winners of this tournament, 16 of them played the week before. So the one I picked from last week is Billy Horschel, overpriced at 40 to 1. The third guy is a guy called Keith Mitchell, who was in a battle with Rory McIlroy. Some people might remember the Wells Fargo Championship last year. He is 66 to 1 for €2 each way. Keith Mitchell, once again, has shot 62 and 63 around here. 3 top 25s at the Sony Open. Likes the course, and I think he's a player who's going to do things in the next couple of years. Keith Mitchell, good ball striker. So he's 66 to 1. Nick Hardy is a rank outsider, 200 to 1. Never be put off the odds. The odds are irrelevant in a 144 player field. €1.50 each way. Nick Hardy, who was one of the better players on the satellite feeder Corn Ferry Tour. Top 10s on 41 starts. 19 top 25s. 14th in this last year, an impressive debut. Might like the track. He could be a lively outsider. And then Brendan Steele in the last 2 years has been the 54-hole leader and has blown it. So he'll either win or he'll be nowhere. He's 60 to 1 for a euro each way. So Brendan Steele, Nick Hardy, Keith Mitchell, Billy Horschel. But the headline tip from Listowel in Ontario, Corey Connors in the Sony Open tomorrow.
Do you know what, John? Like, because we sat around here and said Happy New Year to one another. I'm going to follow you on Virtual Insanity this year.
And you know it's going to have you in a sheepskin rug of a coat by December.
I'll buy a mink coat if you manage to make some sort of profit. It's better
plastic tip cigarillos.
Yeah, I've moved on from crypto. It's back to the gambling.
The dragon eggs are gone.
How much in total is the stake this week? Is it 20 quid?
20 euro virtually. So I start with 1,000. We've reset all that money that I made last year. It's all gone. It's all virtual money. It doesn't exist. So we start with 1,000 and we're spending 20. Generally, I'm going to keep the stakes to 20 unless I'm really in trouble and I need to dig myself out of it. But hopefully, won't be in that situation.
No, let's not do that, please. No chase.
We're talking 40 tournaments a year. So you could be like down a couple of hundred and then you have a 33 to 1 winner. Then you're back ahead. It is a seesaw. It is up and down. So it's a long-term game. Take it easy, folks.
Well, best of luck with that. Anything else? Anything else you want to talk about?
Not really. Like, we all saw Djokovic's Instagram post. Look, a lot of holes in that story, and I think the Aussies are going to deport him. That'd be my prediction. I think they're going to deport him, and I'd say the decision will happen tomorrow. Other than that, I think you've spoken about Shane Lowry, have you? Looking forward to that, and looking forward to Spurs losing to Chelsea tonight.
You buried the lead there, John. Peter Duggan back for the banner.
Yeah, back at the Indo. He played so well in, was it 2018?
Is he a long distant relation?
He's all the Duggans are relations, just as much as all the Gilroys and all the Sheahans are. And my mother's name was Kennedy, so it could be actually JFK. But he's actually from Clooney Quinn, which is very near where my father was from. So there probably is definitely some kind of distant relation I can use to I don't get into some ceremony if he wins the Player of the Year this year. But look, great that he's back. He's an excellent forward, and look, if Shane O'Donnell's there and if Tony Keddy's there, you never know. I think Brian Lohan's a good manager, but look, obviously across the border, they're so far ahead in Limerick at the moment, and that's why you've had all these internal squabbles in Clare.
The paper tells me Shane O'Donnell is still 27. That can't be right, can it?
It can't be, but it definitely is. Like, he was a kid, really, and that was 9 years ago at this point. Wow.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, that was some day. I watched that in a porterhouse bar in Leicester Square. That's where I was that day, screaming at the TV, and people were going, what is this lad at?
It's been a bit of a famine since. John, good stuff. Thanks so much for that.
Take care.
John Duggan with this week's Virtual Insanity. It is 8:52. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. You can WhatsApp 087 9180 180. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream, or you can tweet us at Off the Ball AM. Now, I'm delighted to say Catherine Murphy of ABC News in Australia is with us this morning. Catherine, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
Well, we are very excited about what's going on your doorstep at the moment. What a story. What a global shit show, if everybody will pardon my French. And every passing hour seems to bring new, fresh stuff, where overnight, for Irish people waking up all day, for you today, Novak Djokovic has issued a statement which seems to implicate him in falsifying documents applying for his immigration visa.
It does, Ger. This story is like nothing I've ever seen before. I can tell you, I got back from Cavan over the weekend. There was no time for jet lag. It was straight into this Novak Djokovic story. So the latest, as you said, he's put up a very detailed Instagram post. Now, this is the first time he's spoken or posted on social media since he was released from detention in an immigration hotel in Melbourne. Just words I never thought I'd say. As you say, he has implicated himself a bit because there were questions around the timing of the positive PCR test, which he received in December, which was the sole grounds for his medical exemption. The reason there were questions around it, as you know, is because he was photographed at an event with kids a day later. Then a day after that, he was at a photo shoot with a French newspaper, L'Equipe, and he did an interview masked and socially distanced, but took the mask off for photographs. Now, he's now admitted that he was at a basketball match in Serbia where there were COVID-19 cases. He was told he may be a contact. He was negative in rapid antigen tests, but did a PCR, on the morning of that event that we saw him photographed with young kids at a sports event, he said he had a rapid antigen test that was negative, but then his PCR came back positive. But wait for it, he admits that he decided to go and do an interview with L'Équipe. He didn't want to let the journalist down. Now, Jur, that made me laugh a little bit. Like, you know that we often get let down, right? By interviews.
Particularly by big names, yes.
By big names, and you know how hard they are to get, and you're negotiating with media managers, their agents. You finally get them. They don't turn up. It's happened to all of us. I've been stood up by the best of them. Rafael Nadal waited for him in a corridor for 4 hours. In fairness to him, he was injured. Not his fault. He's such a polite gentleman. But we've all been stood up. But he insists he didn't want to let the journalist down. So in order to not let the journalist down, he thought he would turn up to an interview with COVID-19. And it's over to you, Jur, about would you feel let down with an interviewee turning up with COVID-19?
I'm delighted. Come on in, Novak. Smear me with your germs. Thank you very much. Just cough this direction, please.
I almost, you know what? It takes so much work to set up those interviews. I don't know. I'd almost back my booster injure. But anyway, that's not the point. So he's turned up because he didn't want to let someone down. This statement comes at a really pivotal time where the Home Affairs Minister in Australia still has the power, or the Immigration Minister rather, still has the power to cancel his visa. That process, that decision is still being made. And if you believe reports in the Age newspaper today, and they've been very accurate so far in their reporting, it's still an ongoing decision and they won't be rushed. They don't care that the Australian Open draw is due to happen tomorrow.
It does feel like, just from this side of the world, right? It felt like the court decision was actually, if the government wanted it, it was a nice way out, because they could have said, okay, look, we tried our best. We tried to stop him from coming in. The courts have said we're not allowed, and he gets to play and everybody pays attention. But the trouble is that the story that he's had and the press conference that they gave, the family gave, was so chaotic, and there are so many holes in the story that you can easily start to unravel it. Even the QR code that went public, that initially was the QR code for what looked like a negative test, and then the fact that it's a positive test. And now he really needed this positive test to get the medical exemption. And there's even talk about perhaps he'd missed the deadline for the medical exemption, so they've grandfathered that in. So there's so many doubts about it that it feels like now the Australian government might actually be pressurised into saying, well, I'm sorry, mate, you lied in your documents. We can't be having that.
I do not know, Ger, which way this is going to go. I feel like, so he did a very smart thing, I thought, from a PR point of view. As soon as he got out of detention, he went straight to Centre Court for a training session, straight to Rod Laver Arena. He's pictured there with his team. He's trained there again since then. Yesterday, it was a behind closed doors session. The only footage that we got in our newsroom was from the helicopter, the news helicopter that was sent up. That's how big a story this is. You're talking about a tennis player is going to training. We send up the helicopter to get the shots of him at training. That's how big this is. Today, he trained again, but it was an open training session. So the media were allowed in today. That was a big change from yesterday. So he's been training a lot. He's been at the courts. He's been on site at the Australian Open, which is ready to go. I just find it hard to envisage a situation, but I've been so surprised at every twist and turn of this, Ger, so I'm absolutely not ruling it out. But I'd be very surprised if he was then to end up being removed from that court again. But who knows?
It's a good point. It's a pretty smart thing to do. Get him in there straight away, and then they can't take him out. Like you mentioned, sending the helicopter up, it like has flashbacks to the OJ car chase. Catherine, like what has this been like as a journalist working on this? That this is clearly going to be one of the biggest stories of your career, I suspect, and of covering sport in Australia ever.
It's been just surreal, honestly, because coming back to Australia, usually I'm most worried about after Christmas at home, and the best time at home. My biggest concerns are how hot is it going to be? You know, how am I going to handle going straight to the tennis court from, you know, being back home? And just to be on a live link watching a federal court hearing as a sports reporter instead of watching the tennis. And there's some great tennis on at the moment. We've had Rafael Nadal. He's won a title this week. Ash Barty, the Australian world number one. Usually there'd be so much hype about her. She's won a title this week. But the magnitude of this story and the number of elements in the story is it's almost overwhelming. You know, every piece of this story is a huge story, if I'm making sense. And it's changing so rapidly, and it is dominating every channel, every newspaper. It's hard to believe. At times I'm sitting over here and I'm in disbelief at what's happened.
From being around the city then, and I guess maybe seeing as much as you can the interactions between Australians on the ground over there, how divisive has this story been?
Well, Eoin, it's surprising from the point of view that when it was first announced that he would get a medical exemption, as we know, there was huge anger about that, because this has been a saga for months in Australia between the federal government of Australia and the state government here in Victoria. The state government have been really clear on the fact that they didn't want anyone who wasn't vaccinated coming into Victoria and Melbourne to play in the Australian Open. The federal government said all along it was a matter for the Victorian state government. Then when an independent body of experts gave him this exemption, it appeared that he was coming in despite the Victorian government not wanting him here. And it looked as though the federal government were okay with that. And then when he's up in the air, everything changed. What really changed public opinion from the sheer anger that he was going to be able to come into Australia, because as you'll know, Melbourne has gone through the longest lockdown in the world. People are angry generally. They didn't want him coming in when there are very strict vaccine mandates here. But that anger quickly turned to something else when word came out that he was detained in an immigration hotel after he appeared to, at least on the surface, from a border security, border force point of view, fill out all the right documents. Would you believe there was sympathy? There's been a part of this week, and honestly, the days are blurring into one, where I saw sympathy for him. Now, I've seen that feeling in the community change again today, Eoin, because we've had the revelation that, yes, that positive PCR test in December was followed by movement in the community. Okay, even if he says he didn't know when he was at that public event, he did know at the photo shoot and the interview. So again, public opinion is changing, and I just don't know what's going to happen next.
What about the actual tennis? You mentioned Ash Barty. Naomi Osaka, I think, is back. We had Emma Raducanu getting absolutely annihilated yesterday, 6-0, 6-1. It looks like we're all set for one of the truly great women's Australian Opens anyway.
That's exactly right, Jura. And honestly, I wrote a piece today for ABC, which is coming out at the weekend, about, the stories we should be talking about. There are so many incredible storylines. And let's actually start with Novak Djokovic, what we would have been talking about if we weren't talking about his visa. Of course, we know he's going for title 21. He pretty much owns Melbourne Park. It will be his 10th Australian Open. But just 4 months ago, remember those images of him sobbing under a towel in the third set of his straight sets defeat to Daniil Medvedev at the US Open? That became one of the really enduring images of the season, because we saw that side to him. We saw a vulnerable side to him, and he garnered a lot of support from that. Meanwhile, Daniil Medvedev, the Russian, he beats this iconic player, one of the holy trinity of tennis. He denies him a slice of history. And what does he do? The dead fish, FIFA celebration, the video game. Now, you guys probably know what that is, but please know that sports reporters like me didn't even know what that celebration was. And I'm tipping the big three in their 30s, and now Roger he's 40. He wouldn't have known either. So that's a whole other storyline. There's Rafael Nadal, who's also going for 21. If he wins the Australian Open, and that's a big if, he's coming back from a foot injury, he's 35, you would think he is in a great position to go back to the French Open, which he lost to Novak Djokovic last year, and win that one. He could be up on 22. He could be 2 Grand Slams ahead in the GOAT race. And then, as you say, there's the women's event. Ash Barty, the world number 1, she achieved her childhood dream winning Wimbledon. Usually on any other time in an alternate universe, that's all we'd be talking about here in Melbourne. The world number 1's back. She's won Wimbledon. She's won the Adelaide International this week. She's in red hot form. There's Naomi Osaka. What a story she is. She was one of the biggest, not even tennis stories, biggest sports stories of last year when she withdrew from media, withdrew from the French Open, and then revealed her struggles with mental health issues. She had to withdraw from Wimbledon. She played the Olympics. And then in the US Open, after that 3rd round defeat to Leylah Fernandez, was in tears again and revealing that when she won a tennis match, she was just relieved. And when she lost, she was really sad. There was no happiness for her associated with tennis anymore. She's making her comeback at the Australian Open after a break. These are all huge stories that we would be talking about. And as you said, Emma Raducanu, who had a big reality check last night. She only won 1 game in that match, but she took it really well. She laughed. She didn't want the double bagel. It's going to be a journey for her. I hope the media give her time to develop. She's so young. She's done amazing things, but she's really so new to the tennis tour.
What about Nick Kyrgios? He's tested positive. Is he going to be available to play? Do we know what his vaccination status is, and is he going to be recovered in time?
Well, actually, I just spoke to his manager today, Ger, and in good news, he is symptom-free at the moment. He has been the entire time since he tested positive. He is double vaccinated. He is symptom-free. He's desperate to play at the Australian Open, and I really hope he does. He is box office. So when Nick Kyrgios plays at the Australian Open, he chooses to play at this court that's gone through many name changes. It's called John Cain Arena right now. It was Melbourne Arena. When he plays there, it's not the top court. It's not centre court. It's not Margaret Court Arena. It's a court that you can go to, Ger, on a $50 ground pass. So you can just wander in. Now, when he's playing, there are queues to see him. And watching Nick Kyrgios in that stadium is like no other tennis experience in the world. I've been to a match there, I think it would have been 2 years ago, back in the good times, 2020, the Australian Open happened just before the world shut down. And I think he was playing the Russian Karen Khachanov. And the atmosphere in that stadium, it was like a nightclub. I've never witnessed anything like it. It's the best sports event I've ever been lucky enough to work at. And at the end of the match, so I was emceeing from the side. I was kind of in the corner with my mic. And I had a feeling it was going to kick off at the end. So I moved out courtside just to check on everyone, because you're supposed to announce the players off in their own time when they've packed their bags. And I'll never forget Karen Khachanov taking out his rackets again. And I'm thinking, the match is over. You've been beaten. And he just smashed every one of them courtside as Nick waited to do his post-match interview. And I mean, the music, people were hanging out of the rafters. So I hope Nick Kyrgios is back. Fingers crossed, he's symptom-free right now.
Right. Wow, that sounds amazing. Because
he's amazing. Honestly, I can't recommend.
I need to fess up here, Catherine. We've definitely had a debate over the years with Colin Buig, who's our resident tennis expert, about Kyrgios. I'd had enough of his childish antics, but you're turning me on. You're turning me around here. You're definitely. I'm like, okay, this sounds cool, and also he's really handled himself very well since the start of the pandemic. I'm coming around. I'm softening. I may well be clambering aboard the bandwagon.
I'd like to vouch for him a little bit more. Before the pandemic started in 2020, I remember that was a really tough build up to the Australian Open because the bushfires here in Australia, it was just devastating. It was so scary. And I was in Sydney working at the ATP Cup where Australia was playing and Nick Kyrgios was playing for Australia. And I remember waking up in the hotel that morning and you could physically smell smoke in the corridor. It was so upsetting, like, because you're going to a tennis match and you're thinking, I can smell smoke. Like, there are bigger things in the world. This feels wrong. And Nick Kyrgios was part of a huge drive to raise money for those affected by the bushfires. He really drove it. So even before the pandemic, I feel like he's the sort of guy that you would really like. Honestly, you would love his matches, You'd love them.
Like, just kind of like looking back at like his best returns in the slams, like he was 19 and 20 when he gets to his quarterfinals in Wimbledon and the Australian Open respectively. Like he's still only 26. I kind of had a thought in my head that he was a bit older than that at this point. Is there a sense that he can kind of recapture that teenage/early 20s form and kick on a little bit further, especially if...
Because he's been talking about retiring.
Like, that has been the thing, hasn't he? Yeah, stepping away from it. Like, I don't want to say has he kind of got a refocused attitude towards tennis, but you suspect that that's one of the challenges he has. But if he gets over that, the sky's the limit for this guy still.
The sky is the limit, Eoin, but I'm not sure he wants it. This is such a complex conversation and I'd love to bring a sports psychologist in on this. But Nick was really open last year. He said, I'm not Roger and Rafa. I'm not perfect. I can't work like them. It can't be my everyday living it and breathing it. I'm just not that person. I want to have fun. I just want to have fun. So maybe I'm not going to be that person that wins slams. And he's kind of got to that point where he's saying, take me or leave me. And he knows he's box office. He knows the people like me are dying to work at his next match because of what he brings to a court and the vibe he brings to a court. But it may be, Eoin, that we may have to accept that that's what Nick is, that he's entertainment and he's not that. He's not striving for that. Now, that's hard to accept because every time I go to watch him practice, say, just to have a look at how he's going in practice, he oozes talent out of every pore in his body. Like some players you watch practicing, it's like they bring such an effort. He just it comes so easy to him. And you want him to take that and you want him to use it. And you know that if he used it and he dedicated his life to it, like Roger and Rafa and Novak, that he could do it.
Yeah.
But maybe we have to accept that he doesn't want to.
Yeah, he needs to hang out with Ronnie O'Sullivan and see what turned Ronnie O'Sullivan back into the world champion after he lost his mojo. Catherine, I don't know if you've been keeping abreast of Owen's power rankings, but he humiliated Cavan by putting them on the third page yesterday. And then he himself was humiliated last night when Tyrone, the All-Ireland champions, were ritually humiliated by the Cavan footballers last night, which leads to Shane commenting on YouTube, can you ask Catherine, is it Cavan's year?
It is Cavan's year. I don't want to jinx them, Eoin, but I think I'm so lucky that I didn't know you did that, Eoin. Like, clearly, we've beaten the All-Ireland champions. Would I be here now if I knew Eoin said that? We're okay with a huge apology, Eoin. I'm sure you'll make it up to Cavan.
At some point. Mistakes. Catherine, great stuff. Thanks a million. Great to talk to you.
Oh, lovely to talk to you, Ger, Eoin, anytime. Take care.
And a happy new year. Thanks a million. It's Catherine Murphy live from Australia, giving us the details there of what the hell is going on with Djokovic. And obviously it is an ongoing story. So a brilliant PR move from Team Djokovic to get him onto the court.
Yeah.
Make everybody see what they're going to be missing.
Yeah, or even it would just be kind of, it would seem incongruous almost for him to be turfed out of the country now after setting foot in the court.
Yeah.
I think.
Rugby fans, you will not want to miss our latest instalment of an OTB Sports video series with Leia Healthcare. The series features rugby stars Bevan Parsons, Lindsay Peat and Dorothy Wall and examines how they stay a beat ahead. Leia Healthcare, official health and wellbeing partner to Leinster, Munster and Connacht Rugby. Episode 3 is out now on OTB Sports social channels.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
I don't know, all these talks about kicking you say lanes, but Mark Lane said I don't think you can kick the balls far with them late boots on too, to be honest. No, definitely Andy, that's better.
We used to have Eamon O'Hara in with us, you know, with the club. O'Hara used to come with the nicest boots of all time, you know. They used to, like, out of the attic, boots, a box of Adidas boots coming in. And all the young fellas used to be like, where is he putting these boots on him? So when Cunningham goes in now, coaching his first club team, everyone will be like, where is he pulling out these Need Antrim?
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
I think for women's sport in general, there's fantastic coaches there, but I'd like to be the elite coach. You know, as I've been the elite athlete, I'd like to be the elite coach to try and propel the standard of women's rugby up, and especially I'd like to do that with my club Railway Union and obviously then with Leinster.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
Right. Phil Egan is here for the first. Is it the first? I missed last week, obviously. Is this the first Deal or No Deal?
Well, I missed last week as well.
Yeah, so it's a
Phil,
it's
have
our
you been
first.
in last week?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, lads. Sorry. I wasn't here last week. Right. Well, I was here last week, but I wasn't doing Deal or No Deal.
In his cover story profile interview with GQ, the sports issue, Mo Salah stated that he is ready to commit his future to Liverpool if Liverpool will meet his terms. I want to stay, but it's not in my hands, it's in their hands. I'm not asking for crazy stuff. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that Salah is signing a new Liverpool deal?
Right now, I'm going to probably freak a lot of Liverpool fans out, but I'm saying about a 3.
Oh, Phil, you read this and saw, ooh, I'm worried, right?
Well, it's dragging on, and the problem is, look, we've seen this in the past, but okay, like Gini Wijnaldum obviously left, but Wijnaldum, as good as he was for Liverpool, isn't in the same league as Mo Salah in what Salah can bring to the team. But the problem is this is going to just keep getting brought up now. Like Klopp is going to do his press conference ahead of the Arsenal game tomorrow. He's going to be asked about it, and he'll play it down. He'll just say, look, you know, we're talking right now, we haven't reached a decision. But the more this drags on, the more I start thinking, like, this is madness. Are they going to let Mo Salah leave on a free?
Why?
Because he's not going anywhere in the summer. No.
Why are Liverpool not fixing this? What is wrong with Liverpool that they're not just saying it's 400 grand, it's 500 grand? It doesn't actually matter. The money doesn't matter because they'll get it back. They're not going to get a player as good as him to replace him without paying that money anyway.
True.
What are they doing?
I don't know. Like, they obviously have a wage structure, and when Mo Salah says it's not crazy stuff, we don't know what crazy is in terms of what the Salah team are asking for. Liverpool obviously have a wage structure that, you know, they're after renewing contracts for, say, Van Dijk, for example. Like, how far ahead does Salah go of Van Dijk in terms of a wage? What does that do to the dressing room? I mean, if you're sitting beside Mo Salah and you know he's getting a lot more than you, but he's just after scoring a hat-trick at Old Trafford, you're thinking, Mo, you're worth everything. It's okay.
My win bonus is dependent on you scoring those goals.
Yeah.
You score those goals, I get my win bonus. I negotiated my deal. It's fair.
Yeah, and also, with Mo Salah in the team, you have a better chance of winning things in terms of Premier League titles or Champions League titles. You can go out and sign a player that might have the potential to become as good as Salah, but like you said, you will have to pay for that, and then obviously their wages on top of it, whereas you have Mo Salah at the club now, and yeah, it just worries me that it's going on. It should be, the sooner it's put to bed, the better. So look, I'm not saying, like, right now I don't think it's not going to get done, but it's just, you asked me a question and at the moment I'm feeling like a 3 out of 10. Next week that could change. Klopp could say something today where that could go up to a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or an 8. But it is just a bit of a concern that we've seen this before with Liverpool players, but we haven't seen it with star players. We haven't seen this under Klopp. Obviously, they got rid of Coutinho, but that was a completely different situation. That wasn't a player that has obviously been Liverpool's top scorer turning around and saying, yeah, I love it here and I want to sign up.
I love the fans. It's been really good for me. I want to stay.
I wonder, when you talk about the dressing room and the wage structure that exists, are Liverpool's concerns increased by the fact that we're talking about their 2 best players being 30? So Salah turns 30 this year, Van Dijk is already 30. So what you're doing is, and I'm not for 1 second equating Mo Salah to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang here, but if you look for the 1 or 2% of paranoia that might be in Liverpool's heads, when Arsenal handed out that contract to Aubameyang, he was 30 years of age as well and had clearly just got to his peak, and it was all downhill there. Granted, you don't necessarily hit your peak once you hit 3-0. It could be 33, could be 34 in Salah's case. But are they paranoid about the big birthday coming up? Is that factoring into even just a little bit of what Liverpool are thinking?
It definitely. Well, look, that's how they think. They think in terms of when they offer big contracts to players, they tend to go, even when they sign new players, there's an age profile, and obviously Salah was part of that age profile when they signed him from Roma. But I certainly get what you mean with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but one thing you've got with Salah since he's been at the club is he's been the model pro.
Yeah.
Like, there was no history of issues off the field like there was with Aubameyang when he was at Dortmund, and when he signed for Arsenal, we saw how good he could be, but since he signed the contract, he's been pretty dreadful, and they're trying to get rid of him at the moment. But with Salah, I think, look, you look at a player like Salah, and he's going to be 30 in June, and he's part of this high intense team, but he's so good that you can change his role. Like, he obviously plays on the right, but you could play him in the middle. You could play him in a more withdrawn role. So I don't think
it doesn't make any sense. I see the point, right? And I see the Alexis Sanchez contract, and I see Mesut Ozil contract, and you see examples of these players in world football who fell off a cliff. Like, they were excellent, they were world class, they fell off a cliff. But you also see players like Salah, who wants to be the best player in the world, who wants to win the Ballon d'Or, who wants to win the Golden Boot, who has that level of ambition. Like, you see them look after themselves the way Messi and Ronaldo. So for every Aubameyang, like, when you're talking, and Aubameyang, it wasn't as good.
No, he's in a different category.
So, like,
this is Lewandowski, Ronaldo territory here. Like
Lewandowski,
Mo Salah,
another great example,
is one of the best players in the world right now, and Liverpool have him. And it just seems very strange that they haven't tied him down yet. And if you think about it, this time next year, Mo Salah could start negotiating contracts with other clubs.
No, don't let it happen.
That's madness.
Like, Barcelona could be all of a sudden capable of signing players again. The books could have been balanced come the start of 2023. Who knows?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, but here's the thing: if they drag their heels for another 5 or 6 weeks, those conversations are already happening. Like, the agents will so Paris Saint-Germain will come along and they'll say, we will give you $1 million a week, we will give you 800 grand a week, we will give you 700 grand a week if you just sit that out for the next year. Keep playing at this level. Here are the levels that you need to attain if you're fit, and if you attain those levels, we will give you that money. So, like, it's a very short window that Liverpool have, and it doesn't make any sense.
No,
from a marketing perspective, from like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
and if you think as well about Jurgen Klopp, he's obviously, we kind of think he's going to finish up around 2024 at Liverpool. So does he want his last few years to be rebuilding to a team without Mo Salah? And like, it's already hard enough trying to compete with Manchester City. Is
there anything in Salah's performances that we're not seeing, that there might be a data point that suggests, while that, like, is his XG off the charts, so that actually he's not getting the same number of chances? Is there something going on, or is there a possibility that there's something going on that we don't know about?
No, well, like, his injury record is excellent. He's, what you see with Salah is he's kind of gone back to what we saw in the first season, where he gets a lot of chances and he doesn't put all of them away, but because he gets so many chances, he's going to score goals. But I think he's gone to a different, like, I know he scored 44 goals in his first season, but there's been differences this season where some of the stuff he's done, like even I look at the Chelsea goal where the ball was played from Trent Alexander-Arnold and how he went by and he just gave the eyes to Mendy, where usually the Mo Salah finish is in the other corner and he tricked him and he put it in the other one. And he has days where everything he touches goes in, like that game at Old Trafford where he scored the hat-trick. I just think at the moment, obviously Liverpool have tailed off a bit in terms of their title challenge, and you know, they have a few weeks ahead without Salah because he's obviously away, even though Egypt lost yesterday, but they still have a decent enough, the group is straightforward enough that they should win their next two games. That wouldn't it be great if he came back, whether he wins the African Cup of Nations with Egypt, something, again, he says he'd love to do, and then the contract gets sorted and then Liverpool can push on for the rest of the season. I think that the Premier League is gone, but I think the likes of Salah and Mane coming back from the AFCON, I think Liverpool have a really good chance in the Champions League. But yeah, it's the more it drags on, it's just going to be brought up in all of Jurgen Klopp's press conferences, and it's just going to irk him.
Okay. And he hasn't been great in the press conferences when he's been pissed off recently. We got to see angry, annoyed Jurgen Klopp in press conferences about nothing recently. Like, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, it's another mini Liverpool session here. Speaking on Premier Sports, Shay Given advised Eoin Kelleher to leave Liverpool on loan in this window. The quote is, he's not a kid anymore. 23 is an age where I think he should be playing regular first team football. Is he right? Will Kelleher's progression be stalled if he stays at Anfield? Between 1 and 10, does he go on loan in this window or even next summer? He's definitely not going on loan in this window. Absolutely zero chance of that. He's obviously going to play tomorrow against Arsenal in the League Cup, because if you look at Liverpool's Twitter feed, they said next game against Arsenal tomorrow, and who's the picture on the tweet? It's Eoin Kelleher. This is what we expected, that he would play League Cup, FA Cup. He obviously played against Shrewsbury and had a pretty good game. There was one moment where there was a long throw that came in, and you know, he had to come out and he punched it and he recovered the save, and maybe that's kind of what he needs, where if he was on loan, but he's been so good that maybe if you asked me at the start of the season about him going on loan, you'd be thinking, loan in the Championship, but he's been so good that if he was to go on loan, he should be looking at Premier League clubs. But it's not going to happen in this month for a few reasons. Obviously, players can test positive. I know Alisson has already tested positive for COVID, so that would suggest he might not get it again between now and the end of the season. But Alisson's injury record, it's like he's usually available, but there has been moments, and you think back to that Ajax game in the Champions League last season, where Liverpool fans were in a situation where the dread of knowing Alisson was rumoured to be out, the prospect of Adrian playing, and then all of a sudden Klopp springs a surprise, Kelleher starts, plays unbelievable, makes that save from Huntelaar at the end. The rest is history, and every time he goes in now, the biggest compliment you could pay to Eoin Kelleher is when Alisson is not available, Liverpool fans are not as worried. And you think back to the game at Stamford Bridge where he was excellent, very little he could do about either goal, and he obviously made that save from Pulisic, 2 saves from Pulisic, and he just looks so calm. And you hear the likes of Virgil van Dijk talk about him in such glowing terms. So I think he's just going to keep getting better, and he obviously loves the club. So I'd be very surprised if he'd be looking away even at the start of next season. Look, I mean, I can understand what Shay Given is saying in terms of maybe the Irish point of view, that he has to have ambitions of being the Ireland number one, but at the moment that position is held by Gavin Bazunu. What's his best pathway to being the Liverpool number one? It could be to do a loan season in the Premier League, and then Alisson obviously gets on a little bit, but Alisson is so good. He's 29 still as well. Yeah, I just checked. Yeah, it's like he's not. He's perfect age for goalkeeper, and he's happy. He's like, if you look as well now at the setup, Taffarel has been brought in. There is other Brazilian keepers at the club. It's like he's just not going to become Liverpool number one while Alisson is there, and Alisson is going to be there for a good while longer. It would seem so. It's a hard conversation, but Liverpool cannot let Kelleher go on loan unless they have a better backup, and Adrian is not that.
So the drop off between, say, Alisson going down to Adrian and Alisson going to Kelleher, like the difference there is so big right now that if Liverpool were willing to let Kelleher go out on loan for a season, they'd have to bring in a better backup keeper. So if it was going to happen, maybe it does happen in the summer. Maybe Queevy and Kelleher has to have a discussion with Jurgen Klopp and say, I just want to play every week.
And that might be the right thing for Liverpool to do if they, so Liverpool obviously are looking at this from a business perspective. They need a backup goalkeeper who's nearly as good as the original goalkeeper, and they seem to have that with Kelleher. But equally, at some point they'll be like, well, that means he's worth between 20 and 35 million. Like if Kelleher is as good as we think he could be in 18 months' time, then so at that point you do send him out on loan for a year. You do what Man United should have done. They could have cashed in on Dean Henderson, or you do what Arsenal did with Emi Martinez, and you get the money for him.
Like the question I would have, like, is it's kind of hard to gauge sometimes how much a goalkeeper actually gains from being at a top club. Like, for example, Gavin Bazunu playing a few divisions down is clearly still developing, despite the fact that the outfield football isn't at that level. But if we think that maybe this guy is good enough to be a Premier League starter, like where does he go? Who are the Premier League clubs that have a vacancy that Queevy and Kelleher could come in and start as a Premier League footballer? And there are very few. Like, I mean, you're looking at a club that is going to get relegated immediately.
I'll tell you one club actually that comes to mind. I was watching them last night, Southampton. They've struggled with goalkeepers. I think they obviously had Angus Gunn, then McCarthy has been in there, Forster's there, Willie Caballero had a loan spell, and obviously, I'm not just saying Hassan Hootel and Klopp obviously did their coaching badges together, their pro license together. They know each other. Similar kind of outlook on how they play. That's just one Premier League club that I think would be better with Queevy and Kelleher as their goalkeeper. I'm not saying that that's where he should go, but there is Premier League clubs out there that could do a Queevy and Kelleher.
And whoever gets promoted.
Whoever gets promoted, obviously. What about Leeds? Like, is it like? I mean,
that kid's good, isn't he?
Meslier is
going to get better.
He's going to get better. But he's, no, in fairness, and he is young and he is on the upward trajectory. But at the moment, if you're looking at I've not been convinced by Meslier at times.
No,
to be quite honest with you. So that's kind of why I'm saying.
I think Leeds fans are quite patient with it. They know that he is quite young. He looks about 15.
He does look 15.
And at
maybe
times,
he's 45.
Because I was looking at him going, what happened here? What? I woke up and there's children playing Premier League football.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad you think the
same. He is 21. Actually, he's actually younger than Queevy and Kelleher, as it turns out. So that's not gonna happen. You're looking at a promoted team, or else hitching yourself to a team that's possibly going to get relegated.
We've got to fly through here. Larry says Liverpool will give Salah the contract, but what they're going to do is at the transfer window run down, then they'll announce the Salah deal to distract from signing nobody.
Could do, yeah. Yeah, that is something that has happened before. They did it. Remember last season? Or at the start of the season, they started doing it. Like Nat Phillips got a new contract. It was almost like
big news.
It was almost like they were trolling Liverpool fans. Well, certain Liverpool fans that think that you have to win the transfer window as well as everything else.
Sometimes it helps.
It does. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on because we've got 3 minutes left and we've got about 15 stories to get through. At 29, what impact is Philip Coutinho going to have on the Premier League in his return?
There's going to be glimpses, I think, but will it be enough to get him back in the Premier League? Will Villa stump up the cash at the end of the season? They have the option to buy. Will they see enough from him? Watching them the other night, there's definitely a nice team developing at Aston Villa. A few positions, if they get that Luca Dean deal done, they're obviously stronger then in the left back position. Buendia showed glimpses the other night. His finishing let him down. There was a couple of chances where I thought Coutinho would have buried those, but you have to remember Coutinho hasn't been nowhere near as good as he was when he left the Premier League, because he was at the top of his game when he was playing for Liverpool.
He was one of the best players in the world at that stage. Marcus Rashford, is a parting of the ways with Manchester United mutually beneficial?
I don't know, it's really strange watching it because I've so much time for Marcus Rashford as a footballer and obviously for what he does off the pitch, but I think we're at a situation now whereas you're looking at the Rashford that broke into the United team, who was a little bit unknown at the time when he was sprung from the what we thought was going to be the bench to start that game under Louis van Gaal in the Europa League, then obviously scores against Arsenal in his Premier League debut, and then you've got this unbelievable kid with just pace and just fearlessness. And watching him the other night against Villa, he looks like it's such a chore to be out there, and his confidence is shot. He's played through too many injuries. I remember Solskjaer saying at one time, we're lucky Marcus is a quick healer. Well, maybe not.
Exactly. They flogged him and they made him play with a broken back, and they're reaping the rewards in that now that he's lost his confidence. So maybe a move away from Manchester United and being at Manchester United and being one of the kids is actually the right thing for him.
Possibly, but I've always thought there's a serious talent there. I think what's happened here as well is obviously there's a loss in confidence. Paris played too many games through injury, but also a lack of coaching. I don't think he has received the adequate coaching that a young player with that attacking ability should have got out of the club at Manchester United.
Okay, last one for now. Matt Doherty's been linked with a return to Wolves as part of a swap deal, or listen, you take him, give us Adama Traore and we'll give you some money as well. How badly does Doherty need this move?
He needs to get out of there because it's clear that he doesn't really have much of a future under Conte. If he goes back to Wolves, not sure how much Bruno Lage or how much game time he's going to give him. Semeido's in there, but at least if he goes back to Wolves, he'll be back at a club where he's got happy memories, and that might even just be the confidence booster he needs to get his career back on track. And we want to see him obviously getting regular football, and then he can bring it into the international team.
Yeah. AJ says, lads, Leeds would be bottom 3 if it wasn't for Meslier.
Well, I would, yeah.
You're
Well, I think they've shown this season that Patrick Bamford is certainly a more important player. What they actually offer in attack has been something that's been really important. Meslier is 21. He's obviously going to come good. Yeah. I apologise to all the Meslier lovers out there. I shouldn't have said what I said about him, but I was just speculating.
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette and Meslier apologists. Good mornings. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We could send him one. He wouldn't need one yet.
Just one thing on Matt Doherty are you actually looking at Ait Nouri or whoever's playing on the left hand side rather than Semedo as somebody that he goes back to challenge with, because he came on for Spurs at left wing back the other day, or during Christmas I should say, and I was like, that looked like the Matt Doherty who played left wing back for Ireland against Portugal a few months ago.
You'd take that.
Yeah,
definitely
look,
take that, would you?
Anywhere he plays. He played left back for the Wolves team before the whole Nuno thing. He was playing as a left back, but it was more in a 4.
All right. Feel good stuff. That's this week's Deal or No Deal. We're talking about the state of Irish football tomorrow and the FAI.
I signed for them after the Euros. I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training I was driving home, I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
I should have known better than to interrupt Keith and Kev. Sorry about that, lads. We're talking about the state of Irish football and the FAI with Neil O'Riordan tomorrow. Graham Hunter's going to talk about tonight's Classico. We'll talk about Breed Stack, and Malcolm O'Kelly is going to look at Ireland's second row depth charts. Now, Billy Joe Padden and Colm Keys talking about the retirement, ultimately, of the greatest goalkeeper who has ever played the game, Stephen Cluxton.
Welcome back. So at 40 years of age, with 8 All-Irelands and 16 Leinster Championships, we think the career of Stephen Cluxton and Dublin is very much at an end. Retirement, the word hasn't been used literally, but certainly Dessie Farrell suggested that is the case. Did win a Leinster minor in 99 as well, and an under-21 Leinster in 02, but he, at that stage, had made his senior championship debut in 01, was pretty much first choice immediately. Along with the 8 All-Irelands and 16 Leinster Championships, there were 6 All-Stars, Footballer of the Year in 2019, and I dare say he goes down as Footballer of the 21st century by dint of influence and longevity and general excellence. To discuss, Colm Keys of the Irish Independent and Billy Joe Padden. You're there, Billy Joe?
I am, Joe. How are you?
Very good. Colm, might start with you. So I hesitate here a touch. Look, if Stephen Cluxton had released the old statement and thanked the fans and thanked everyone, then we could just get straight into the, my God, what a player, what a career. However, all we have to go on at the moment is Dessie Farrell after the O'Byrne Cup game against Offaly. Stephen won't be involved this year. He wasn't involved last year. Stephen is not one for big announcements, as you know. No fanfare, no official announcements from him in that regard. But Stephen won't be involved this year. And I think out of respect to him, we need to let him live his life and we need to do our own thing. We know the position. Hopefully everybody else knows it at this stage now. So we do know the position, Colm, do we? Can we just neatly call that retirement from intercounty football?
I think so, Joe. I think that's it. I think it's almost classic Stephen Cluxton departure in one way. In that there has been so much about it. It's been so long, and in his desire to slip off quietly, it's actually probably reversed in that it was really one of the one of the main stories or threads of stories last summer and right through to now. I suppose there wasn't really any expectation that he would be back, but this is as close to drawing a line under Stephen Cluxton's career that we are going to see and Dublin are going to get. It's a pity in one sense. I mean, I was speaking to Alan Brogan before Christmas and he described it as sad that the greatest goalkeeper ever in the game and, you know, arguably one of the greatest players ever in the game. I mean, I think if we were sitting down now, any group of people to pick a team of the century or the team of the millennium or anything like that, I'd have no doubt that Stephen Cluxton would be the first name and there wouldn't be any discussion or debate about it. That's the status and that's what he has achieved in the game. But Alan Brogan did say, you know, it's sad that maybe more can't be made of it, and perhaps that's the way he wanted to slip away. But as you said at the outset, we would be going into overdrive about a career that has certainly been the greatest we have known in the modern era.
Yeah, because Colm, I suppose if you were into reading into every word and semantics and a touch of conspiracy theory as well, you could look at Dessie Farrell's comments and you could remember the reporting that last year he was initially training with them and then there was the breaking of the COVID ban and suddenly he wasn't involved and it dragged on and that seemed to be an issue. Now, I don't know because nobody's clarified that. Cluxton hasn't clarified that. Farrell hasn't clarified that. But that was certainly reported. But if you were into some kind of, like I said, looking for holes in what Dessie Farrell said at the weekend, there's a degree of, well, he's not involved this year, but, you know, maybe Cluxton's just so upset with what happened last year and maybe if Farrell's not around, he could be persuaded to come back. But even as I say that feels like I'm really stretching it, but I just wanted to say it anyway so you can shoot it down.
I suppose from Dessie Farrell's point of view, he would have looked back at last year and said, well, maybe I left this hanging around for too long. Because that right up to the, if I recall, certainly after the Meath game, the Leinster semi-final that they won, he was asked about it. Just can't recall whether he was asked about it after the Kildare game, but I'd imagine he was, and that was 2 weeks out from the All-Ireland semi-final as well. So this hung around basically from the first question, really, that I recall was in Thurles after the Dublin-Kerry draw. Dublin played that game, obviously. It was a home game and they had to play it down in Semple Stadium. And Mick Galvin was asked after that game and he was asked again after the Donegal game. And again then Dessie, when he came back from his suspension, was asked after the Wexford game, and he didn't give any clarity really because he couldn't. And I suppose given the Cluxton's legacy and his reputation in the game and everything else, he had no clarity and therefore he probably didn't feel it was his place to give it. So therefore it rumbled on. I wouldn't say it was a huge distraction, but it was one nonetheless that suggested, you know, all isn't really in control here. And that was probably a carryover from the breach of the training ban too, that the control that we would have associated with Dublin teams, by and large, through the Jim Gavin era. And I will say there was moments when maybe they didn't have control of everything there either from time to time. But generally, there was largely control there. And it just felt like it was slipping a little bit from Dublin, and maybe those same standards that they had become accustomed to were slipping. And into that, maybe Cluxton recognised this, and there may have been something, and we don't know, as you said, what impact the training ban had. But I think Dessie Farrell will have felt he left this hanging around for too long, and at the first opportunity, after the first game of this season, He's nailed it, and he's basically said he's not going to be there. He's also added Jack McCaffrey. Paul Mannion had ruled himself out the day before. Yeah. So there's clarity there. None of these three players will be involved this year, and it's time for them to move on, and it's time for the other Dublin players to move on. Obviously, Dessie Farrell can't retire Stephen Cluxton just like that. That's his own decision, and it's probably one that that will never happen, because ultimately, Maurice Fitzgerald never retired from the game after 2001 either. There was no retirement statement there. He just slipped off and he never came back.
Yeah, I guess a slightly different era, but I do take the point. Look, I think we'll call it retirement. He's unlikely after 2 years away to return as a 41-year-old. I mean, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. So Billy Joe, in terms of the career, like I said, debut for Dublin in 2001, 6 All-Stars, Footballer of the Year 2019, 8 All-Irelands, and I mean, those are eye-watering statistics, and yet even they don't compare to the influence he had on the position, which is even greater, I think. So an absolute phenomenon. And you would have played in that period where he started to shift what goalkeepers were doing. And it must have been interesting for you as a half forward, maybe at times he was meant to pick up the scraps around midfield.
Yes, it was difficult to figure out where the ball was going to land, but I think it was even harder maybe sometimes for wing backs, because in those early days I was playing, in the early naughty, those spaces in the wide midfield areas, Sheahan Ryan and players like that ran into, he was so adept at picking them out. But I think even that period he was exceptional, and the best.
Oh, do you know what?
I remember talking
to your line's not behaving, Billy Joe. We'll either get you back on the phone, or we might knock off the screen just to see if it helps. The Wi-Fi might be the best thing to do. So we'll get Billy Joe back on a better line at the moment. But Colm, you can take up the point really as an observer, because it was, I mean, the effect he had was so drastic. Everybody in the stadium could see it.
Yeah, I suppose I would probably say around the mid to late 2000s, the dynamic of Stephen Cluxton's game changed, and by 2007 he already had 3 All-Stars, half his All-Star total. But it was really after that, it was really the Pat Gilroy era, and I take what Billy Joe Padden is saying about Sheahan Ryan, all that, but it became very, very tactical in the Pat Gilroy era, the whole issue of Cluxton's kickouts, and he really embraced it. And Gary Matthews was his initial coach, and I suppose with him they worked their way through it. But they saw advantages in terms of the numbers around kickouts, or restarts maybe, as they're more commonly known as. And he went after that, and all of those who worked with him and played with him and shared the dressing room would say just how complex he could be with his strategy around kickouts, and they all had to move along with that. Not just his own, but in terms of attacking the opposition kickouts as well, he would have participated in that. So it probably leads down the line to a prospective coaching career at a very high level, I would imagine, given his appreciation for that side of the game. But he really went after it, and I mean, and he was at his best with it, Joe, in All-Ireland finals, especially when the pressure and the heat was on. I mean, Mayo really got after him in the first half of the 2017 All-Ireland final when they had them under pressure. But in the second half, he barely gave a ball away. I don't think he did actually give a ball away. And it was the same in the 2013 final. Again, a kick-out masterclass in the second half of that All-Ireland final when Dublin were under a lot of pressure. And you think back to that kick-out in the early stages of the 2018 All-Ireland final, where Jack McCaffrey makes the run up along the Cusack stand side, and Cluxton lands it onto his chest with a bounce, and McCaffrey takes off. Kieran Kilkenny scores a point, and I think it makes it about 5-2. And after an initial period of doubt around Dublin, just a slight sliver of doubt around Dublin, everything changes after that. It was just such a kick-out change, and I think there was one the year before. So he was capable of some just remarkable game-changing kick-outs throughout. So, and if you even consider the Kevin McMenamin goal in 2013 that changed that All-Ireland semi-final against Kerry, again, it came from a kick-out put into the right area where I think it was Michael Darragh McCauley gets a touch to it and McMenamin takes off. So he was pivotal from that point of view with his kickouts, and even when he was under pressure, he always responded. If you take the 2016 All-Ireland semi-final against Kerry possibly got both goals just before half-time, put them 5 up, and in the second half, Cluxton steers the ship out those kickouts, and they go and win the game, having been 5 points down, and they win it by 2, not scoring a goal. It was just relentless, his restart. So all around, I think he obviously, it goes without saying, and it's been said so often, yes, he transformed the game, and he is the most consequential player of the last, how many decades? 2, certainly, possibly even 3.
Yeah. Billy Joe, I think you're back with us. You're there?
I am.
Great. Yeah, loud and clear now. So we just lost you at the point where I was asking about that period where Cluxton really started to morph into the finished product, I suppose, that we've known for the last decade. And you were mentioning half-backs. It was maybe even more difficult for them.
Yeah, back then, the pressure was Dublin were so good at open in the wide midfield area, and Cluxton's kicking ability and timing to land the ball in that area for a dominant Dublin player, whether it be a half forward, Conal Keeney, or somebody coming out, or Sheahan Ryan or Kieran Whelan, even in the early stages, winning the ball there. And that was, I think, down to his accurate kicking and being able to keep a low trajectory on it and basically whacking it out there. But I think in many ways, I remember talking to David McIntyre in 2014 when we were covering a game, and at that period I felt he was the greatest goalkeeper that we'd ever seen. And then when you think what he went on to achieve and how he even went on to get better as a goalkeeper, because when teams got kind of closed down those wide midfield areas for him as because they were his favourite places to go at the kickouts. They're the most effective. They get you into the opposition's half as quick as you possibly can, at a wide area where you can then cross the ball back in front of the goals. It's where any goalkeeper would ideally want to place their kick out if they could into space to give it to one of their own players. But then his confidence, his calmness on the ball, his understanding of what his defenders needed to do to work the ball up the field in the latter stages of his career, in terms of his ability to restart possession. And that included, he was happy to go 2 short ones to Johnny Cooper at corner back, knowing then that might open up a bit of space for the next kick out, or the kick out after that out the field where he'd find that bit of space. It's just understanding, and his control of every aspect of restarting the game was just masterful. And he totally redefined what a goalkeeper has to do. I think that in terms of when you're looking at his impact on the game, I think we were going to get to a situation where coaches were going to put even, the huge importance that they do on the role of the goalkeeper and the role of the restart. But he definitely accelerated that, and in many ways I think he reached a level that I'm not sure that any other goalkeeper will reach again in future.
Oh really? It's nice. So we, often the first over the wall sets a certain standard and then everybody else builds on it. You think what he was producing will endure?
I definitely do, because I think it's his mentality. And I know speaking about maybe times where he was put under pressure and you felt maybe, okay, is he feeling the heat, and is he trying to do things too quickly, is he trying to get the ball out, and maybe he could have been at fault for a couple of goals maybe in that Kerry game that Colin was mentioning. But again, then in the second half, he instantly rights the ship. It's 5 or 6 minutes and he's back to normal, back to his brilliant best. And I think that mentality is what people, we only really became really aware of that in the latter stages of his career, because we were maybe so impressed with his kicking ability in the early stages of really finding the accuracy of even taking long range frees, which he didn't do in the latter stages of his career, and his ability to find them in the midfield area. Whereas for me, it's about his understanding of the game, his ability to deal with the few mistakes that he did make and respond quickly. And I think that's the toughest thing in any goalkeeper, is being able to deal with mistakes, because you're going to have to, particularly now when you're in control of every restart, you're going to give the ball away. You can't be absolutely perfect, and it's how you deal with that. And he has dealt with that better than anyone, and I'm not sure anyone will ever deal with it as well as he has. Yeah.
He must have, Colin, been, from an opposition point of view, the most prepared for weapon of any, very few players would have had to endure the level of scrutiny and coaches sitting down watching tape trying to get to grips with what he was doing, and still come the 70 minutes he was able to come out on top. I can only imagine the amount of hours James Horan or Rochford or any number of other coaches spent watching Cluxton kickouts and marking down where it went, what minute it went in, just to look for some kind of pattern, to look for something.
Yeah, and Joe, they had a lot of success too. Mayo had a lot of success on Stephen Cluxton, and I mentioned the first half of the All-Ireland final in 2017, and they can probably go back to the latter stages of the drawn semi-final in 2015 when I felt he was coming under a bit of pressure in that game too, but again, responded in the replay, and they go on to win the first of the 6 in a row after that. So yes, and you know, any of the Kerry players that, played in the Fitzmaurice or even the Jack O'Connor, the latter stages of the Jack O'Connor era, would always reference the amount of time and strategy they put into trying to read Stephen Cluxton's kickouts, and with some degree of success too. But he was always able to move that dial again and to recover and to reset. I can always remember a great cheer going up when he put one over the sideline early stages of the 2015 All-Ireland semi-final. It was like as if Kerry, or All-Ireland final in 2015, it was like as if Kerry had scored a point or even a goal. Such was the reaction of the crowd that it felt like a real win. Cluxton had kicked the ball over the sideline. So that's the impact he had on teams, no doubt, and on opposition supporters. If they felt that they were getting at him, it felt like maybe the biggest victory of all against Dublin if you're getting Cluxton under pressure. That's the impact he had.
Billy Joe, Colin mentioned a few examples there of really crucial kickouts which led to scores. I think the other one where he hit Brian Howard and Jack McCaffrey was on the overlap, and that led to a great, wonderful goal in either a final or a semi-final, but that moment's etched in the mind as well. I think of that because you mentioned those wide midfield areas, between, say, midfield and half back, where he really liked to ping diagonals there because it got Dublin in such a great position from the kick out. And yet so many of his kickouts went dribbled, 15 yards along the ground to Johnny Cooper. Did you feel when he was doing that the opposition were on top? Like some opposition made the decision, well, we're just going to guard up to a certain point and we're going to let him give it short to Johnny Cooper every time. We're going to almost give Dublin the ball, but we're going to press them and they'll be very deep and try and put them under pressure. Others tried to go full court press and then relied on their ability to stop Cluxton, picking someone out on the halfway line. Did you feel any of those two approaches had the most success, or was there a pattern there?
Well, I think you're right. I think there's definitely a pattern there. I think you nearly have to go back to Rafa Benitez's blanket at this stage, in that you have a blanket and it can only cover, the players you have, you can only cover so much of the field. If you take those wide midfield areas away from him, he has Johnny Cooper to go to. And I think maybe the middle section of the 6 in a row, teams had decided, well, let's see how we fare more often than maybe we've done previously with allowing him to go to Johnny Cooper or whoever, or Fitzsimons in the back line. And then all these stats started coming out about how effective Dublin were when they won their own kick-out, and how that led to scores down the other, because they were a fantastic team from 1 to 15, and they were able to create those opportunities. So I think Mayo probably had a bit more success, obviously not enough, than other teams, because they were probably better at putting on the full court press. And I think that if you had a chance of really pressurising Cluxton, you had to be able to do a bit of that, or a good lot of that.
Yeah.
But it was how you were able to put those two things together, and it was about your players being able to react at a time, and when it's hard, understanding that now is not the right time to press Johnny Cooper, because Stephen Cluxton's going to hit him with that 20-yard dribble pass. So I can give him that one. But what I can't get him is I can't let it go over the top of my head to Diarmuid Connolly or whoever running into the opposite, into your half. So I think it was difficult, but I think all that it proves is that Dublin team was so complete that even if you had success at stopping them in the middle third and hitting those targets there, they found another way to beat you. And I think that's in itself is a compliment to Cluxton as well. Because Cluxton, I'm sure, wanted to show the ability that he had with those long, accurate kick passes. But he recognised, look, this is the best decision for the team. This is the right move for the team, even though it's not showing us his full range of abilities. And that's, again, something that maybe we don't mention often enough about Cluxton in terms of maybe his mentality. But he was the ultimate team player as well. And that's to his credit also. And I'm not surprised by the way he's retired. He's remarkable.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. The humility to not take on the Hollywood pass. It was like Leonardo doing paint by numbers with those dribbles to Johnny Cooper repeatedly, but he did the right thing. And look, it says something about the extraordinary career. We haven't even mentioned the free to win the 2011, the seminal moment when the 16-year gap is bridged, the free to win the All-Ireland final against Kerry. And obviously, we kind of look at that now as a fait accompli, and of course he was going to score. But in hindsight, when you think of the weight that was on his shoulders and on the moment, and yet his technique is so fluid and every bit as relaxed as he was hitting the gazillion balls he used to hit before training, that was an extraordinary moment on his part and testament to his technique. And Colm, his retirement does come at an interesting moment for Dublin, in that last year, in any number of ways, there was a sense of standards slipping between the COVID ban, and not to hark on too much about that, but that, and then people have talked about their discipline slipped, and certain shot selection at moments slipped, and he was all about not letting standards slip. So now he's gone, and someone's going to have to step into that breach.
Yeah, and he was captain too, Joe. I suppose we didn't really reference that he was a surprise choice in 2013 when Jim Gavin appointed him captain, but he picked him for the example he set. And now that he's gone, and obviously, as Desi Farrell said, he was gone last year, but there's no doubt it is a bend in the road for Dublin football now, and you just wonder about the quality of the player that they're going to be integrating into the team over the next 2 or 3 years. In the past, you would have seen a Kieran Kilkenny and a Con O'Callaghan coming at under 21 level as it was then. You don't really see that quality of player in Dublin at present, and their underage record hasn't been as strong as it has been in the past. So there's no doubt that there's a search on for players now, and certainly to expand the bench, because the bench wasn't as good as it has been. If you consider, and just in the last year alone, Michael Dara McCauley, Cian O'Sullivan, Kevin McManaman, Stephen Cluxton, if we call this a retirement, Philly McMahon, that's 5 players with eight All-Ireland medals. that's some drain from the dressing room. Not saying they were always on the field at the same time, but they were familiar faces around, and they did set standards themselves. So this is a new era, and I think by nailing down Stephen Cluxton's absence from the dressing room this year, for once and for all, at the very start of the season, it really does recognise a new era for Dublin football now and possible growth. But I think it's going to be more difficult for Dessie Farrell now than it was for his predecessor, Jim Gavin, who had better players around. I think some of the early under-21 teams that won in 2012 and 2014, when Jim was manager one year, Dessie was manager in 2014, they were really talented teams, and I don't think the players coming through, some of them just won't reach those standards. So it's a new era, for sure.
Okay, well, final word to you on that point, Billy Joe. Do you agree with Colm on the standard of player, or there's some, because in my opinion, I think there's some nagging part of me that thinks there's still so much talent there. I think they are going to come back and win this year's All-Ireland with anger and with a vengeance. I think they're going to be men on a mission. What's your sense of Dublin?
Well, if I think of last year's campaign, I still think the 20 minutes Dublin played against Mayo was the best football I saw all of last year in the the opening half, and Evan Comerford was instrumental in that, and he was playing well. All right, he had a difficult period later on, and I'm sure he'll learn an awful lot from that game. I think he's a very good goalkeeper. He's a very good distributor. I think maybe just if I'd add that I think that I've more certainty about what Dublin can do up front in terms of the stage that the likes of Conor O'Callaghan, Niall Scully, Kieran Kilkenny, Paddy Smalley at their career. I think Dublin, those players are still a whole lot to offer. I think there's a bit more uncertainty about what they're going to do defensively. How much longer can you rely on the likes of Johnny Cooper and Fitzsimons, because they've been so good for Dublin, and whether that will impact Dublin more in many ways, because if anything, a lot of their success built on that solidity at the back and that ability to soak up pressure and then use the ball the right way when they were setting up attacks.
Yeah. Well, an interesting season ahead, hopefully. Colm Keys of the Irish Independent, thanks so much, Colm. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Billy Joe Padden, thank you.
Thanks, no problem.
Cheers, fellas. Colm Keys, Billy Joe Padden talking about one of the legends of the game, Stephen Cluxton. Pretty much official now. We won't be seeing him this year and beyond, so it brings a curtain down on as extraordinary a footballing career as we'll ever see.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razor.